Hi, guys. Thank you for clicking on this video. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Kenny Specht. Kenny and I met back in 1993. Kenny was a cop with me in the 2-8. I was on midnights. I was guarding a DOA. I think it was the Ebony Hotel. And when you're new on the job, nobody talks to you, right? Especially for on midnights. So I see this guy come up, and I'm like, oh, good, my relief is here. Dude, you grilled me. How old are you? Where do you live? Why'd you want to come to midnights? Oh, you were breaking my balls. But
I just wanted to make sure you weren't a spy.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing, especially about midnights, bro.
Yeah, we had a tight group on midnights. Nobody vouched for you yet.
I know. So Kenny was nice enough. After your partner Dave went to narcotics, Kenny took me under his wing, taught me everything I know. A great cop, a great friend. Well, that's 31 years ago. And thanks for joining me, brother.
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm good. Thanks for having me, Paul. Yeah.
After
always watch your content. I'm glad to be part of it for a little while now.
Well, I don't have to pay you for saying that yet.
That's a true story.
When did you go to FD? You rolled over to FD in 96, right?
Yeah, October of 96 after a little 8-month stint in the 110.
Oh, that's right. You went to the 110.
Sure. Remember that?
Any difference between the 2-8 and the 110?
I'm sorry?
Any difference between the 2-8 and the 110?
Yeah, I guess. I went to the 110 with a bad attitude, so I didn't look at it with an open mind. I actually back in '92, I think, after being in the 2-8 for 2 years, I submitted a transfer application that I never resubmitted. Somebody had told me that the transfer applications had to be submitted every year. If your transfer didn't take place in the year that you submitted the application, you had to redo it. I wasn't interested in that. I started to kind of get with the program in the 2-8. I knew everything about the 2-8. I knew everybody I worked with. I guess they became a feeling of I was comfortable being there, and I probably wasn't as aggressive in looking to leave in 94 and 95 as I was in 92.
Sure.
And I signed out of Manhattan Central Booking one day in 1996. I'm calling for a page number, and the guy who answers the phone tells me, "Hey, Kenny, you got a telephone message log here. Give me a second," and pulls it up and tells me over the phone that as of a date 2 weeks later, I'm transferred to the 110. And I knew the guy on the phone. We weren't friends, so I knew that it wasn't a joke. I knew that it was legit. And I hung up the phone, and I got to be honest with you, Paul. At that time, we were working with a small crew of. We had these wacky midnight hours, 9 at night to 5 in the morning. We had a small crew, 5 cops, 1 sergeant. We had a sergeant that was great, that really let us do anything we wanted to do. I didn't want to leave. I knew that I was going to the fire department. I knew that the fire department was very close, and I wasn't in a situation where I wanted to try something new. And at the time, I went to the ICO, and this is a little bit of a dig on the New York City Police Department, because you try to do the right thing sometimes, and it just doesn't work out. And I went up to the ICO, and I told him that I got this message. I got this telephone message that I'm going to the 110. And I wasn't interested. I was going to the fire department. However long it was going to be for me to go to the fire department, I would have rather stayed in the 2-8 for that time. And is there any chance at all that maybe some guy on Long Island who's not going to the fire department, maybe I could swap this with him? He could take the transfer to the 110, and I'll stay in the 2-8. And the ICO said, I'll look into it. And 2 nights later, after roll call, he called me into his office. He said, Kenny, there's nothing I can do. It's your transfer. You have to go. So it was a situation where I was a part-timer. I wasn't going to be around much longer. And rather than help, I guess, the police department out to a certain degree by keeping a guy that was going to take the transfer and stay there, they told me I had to go. And so I went. I was put on 4 to 12s. I wasn't asked what I wanted to do. I had at the time. I was almost into my 7th year. I went to the 110. They said, you're on 4 to 12s. And my very first tour, they put me in the back of an RMP. And I'm not better than anybody else. It's not a question of that at all. I was just used to other things. And I was used to my small group on midnights. I was used to, not being in the bag if our sergeant was in. We had a good thing going. And now they put me in the back of an RMP and they tell me to go walk Queens Plaza Mall foot post. I'd been on foot post in 5 years. All right. And a lot of
hospitalized prisoners too. I remember you calling me.
We had Elmhurst Hospital. We had a Queens General. We had that was another thing on 4 to 12s. I still wanted to stay active. I didn't have a lot of time on the cops, and I came from an active area in Harlem, and the 110 is an extremely active command. But I wasn't. Well, two things. When I went to the 4 to 12s, I didn't feel that I wanted to be as active. It's one of those situations when you make a collar, you're off the street for the rest of the night. Not like the midnight, you can go in, do your 61s, your online booking, and get back out. And if you hustle, you can make a couple collars. 110, and I'm not even lying to you. My second tour, I'm walking this foot post on Queens Boulevard outside of Macy's. My radio goes off, and they call me 110 post whatever to go into Macy's because Macy's security guard is holding one. And I've never had this experience before. I've never seen anything like this. And then I walk into Macy's, and they have New York City Police Department paperwork. They have New York City Police Department 61s. They have New York City Police Department online. And the guy hands me this folder and says, "This is your prisoner." And I'm getting handed a shoplifter from a civilian security guard at Macy's, and I have to take this through the system. They don't take it through the system. It was something I wasn't comfortable with. I didn't witness I'm not saying the guy was lying to me, but it's a situation where I never in my life was handed paperwork by a civilian, New York City police paperwork, and said, okay, go to court with this guy. Yeah. And it was just the dynamics at that time of my life, the difference between leaving midnights in Harlem and going to a foot post on the 4 to 12s in Elmhurst, Queens, it really was something I wasn't interested in. 110 was a great command. I worked with great cops. I met great people, and some of them I'm still friends with today. One of them, actually, I was a firefighter with. But all in all, the experience leaving the 2-8 when I didn't want to and going to the 110 and back on foot posts with 7 years on the job, it was something that it wasn't for me. And I wound up spending, I got there in March of 96, and it wasn't too bad. I left in October of 96. I went to the fire department October of 96.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when I first got to the 2-8, everybody was depressed, right? I forgot who the sergeant was, but or maybe it was Captain Morange. He came in to address all the rookies, and he goes, "So you got no hooks, huh? All you guys ended up in the 2-8." But then a lot of people were saying that it grows on you, and believe it or not, even though you hate it now, I hated the commute to start with, and the toll. But even though you hate it now, as time goes by, you're going to not only get accustomed to it, but you're going to like it. And if there's ever a time where you want to leave or you put in to leave, I can guarantee you're going to be in, he said, the CO's office to try and get that squashed. And it's true, because not only with you, but when I was on a sergeant's test, there was a thing, I don't know if they still do it now, but those who did well on the sergeant's test, talk about how the police department, it really sucks. Those who did well on the sergeant's test were going to get automatically transferred to narcotics. And the game that they were playing is, you get transferred to narcotics as a PO, as a police officer, and after 18 months, you get a gold shield and you become a detective. So what they were doing is they were punishing the cops that studied for sergeant, and when you were about 12 to 18 months away from your list number, they were going to take you, transfer you into narcotics, and then never have to promote you, because by the time that 18-month period would have been up, you've now made sergeant and you've been transferred someplace else. So I was doing the same thing. I was begging and praying, please don't send me anywhere. I like it here. I learned a lot, bro. I remember Morange was telling us once, he said, we were talking about how depressing it was, but he said, you'll learn more here than anywhere else. He said when he has the duty, I'd go around, there'd be a homicide. Cops are sitting in the car. They don't even know what they're doing. He says, but cops from the 2-8 or anywhere in Manhattan North, really. They get out, they got the crime scene tape up, they're interviewing witnesses, they know who to call, they know how to handle it. So it was trial by fire, where you learned everything pretty quickly. And you take that experience, and I used it in the other commands that I worked at. One of the things you and I talked about is some of the stuff that you see as a cop, especially at our age, was just a little too much for kids that were 21, 22 years old, right?
So my first foot post was, I graduated in October. I remember being held. It was kind of like a weird thing that was going on. We had a training sergeant, no names. We had a training sergeant, and he was very nervous, extremely nervous. It would probably,
I know who you're talking about.
It probably wasn't the job for him, because the job of a training sergeant is to take those guys under your wing and put them out on the street and follow them and check up on them. You're not on the radio. You're not a patrol supervisor. You're a supervisor for new cops who don't know what it is to be a cop. And I would think that the objective would be to, as safely as possible, teach these guys how to be a cop. But you have to get out on the street sometime. And I was into my second week after graduating the police academy, and we still didn't sniff the street, not a second. And there were 8 of us. It was a small class. We had 8 guys, and we were like, hey, wait a minute here. And I think we all started to pick up on the fact we would sit upstairs for 8 hours in the training room. I remember. We were trained out of our minds. I mean, we just left 6 months in the academy. We're ready to at least see if we can put into, if we can put the work and the knowledge that we have received from the academy into the street. This guy held us. So now our training sergeant has us upstairs for the first week. He has us upstairs for the second week. Watching TV. I'm not even lying to you. This guy would roll in a TV. Maybe we would watch Barney Miller. I said, this is the closest I'm going to get to finding out what it is to be a cop. I have to watch cop shows. Well, one day it finally comes around. It was I'm on a 4 to 12. It's about 8:30 at night. And he says, we're going to go out tonight. I'm like, there's only an hour and a half, 2 hours left in this tour.
That's probably why, yeah.
He loaded us all in a van, 8 of us. Loaded us all in a van. He dropped all 8 of us off at one intersection, 116 and 8. He had 2 guys south of 116th Street, 2 guys north of 116th Street, one on the east side of the street on 8th Avenue, one on the west side. And there were the 8 cops at that 4 corners, 2 on every corner. He drove away with the van. I think he went 1 block down. He sat at 117 feet with the rearview mirror facing us and kept his fingers crossed that we didn't do a thing.
Yeah.
About an hour later, that man made a U-turn, picked us up. I said, that was it. That's it. I felt like I was on a field trip, Paul. When does it start? When do I become a cop? And then gradually we got out, but you mentioned how being young, and when I became a cop, I turned 21 in February of 90. I was in the April of 90 class. So I'm 21 by 2 months. Had a full-time job. I was a fire dispatcher. I joined the volunteer fire department in 1987 when I was a senior in high school. And from the volunteer fire department, I got a job being a dispatcher. It was a great job, and it paid great, and it was the New York State pension system. And I did that for the 2.5 years between high school and the police academy. And I go to the police academy in April of 90, and now it seems like a million years ago, but I can still remember the people I met. I can still remember everything about the spring and summer of 1990 when I was in the academy, and then the graduation. And then there was a map, and everybody I'm sure has seen this map that went to the old academy in Manhattan. There was a map outside the lunchroom, this gigantic map that was on the wall, and it was the
precincts, right?
Yeah, the 5-borough map with the precincts. And when I had nothing going on, Paul, because I was a Long Island guy. I wasn't familiar with the areas of the city. And I would look at that map and I would see the big Brooklyn precincts. And I had a couple of friends of mine in the 110 who I was a volunteer firefighter with. So I would look at that map and I would start saying, wow, I wonder where I'm going to go. And I always saw the 2-8 above Manhattan,
right above the park. Yep.
Like this. It's like this. Yeah. And I swear I remember looking at that map going, man, whoever goes there is screwed. And 2 days before graduation, they line us up. They say, okay, you're getting your assignments today. And they called out my name. And I was familiar with the 2-8 on the map, not familiar with it in real life. But that's the place I said, boy, if you go there, you're screwed. And they called out my name, 2-8. And I said, how
what are the odds?
is this happening? How? And then just, I remember my very first collar in the 2-8. I don't remember what it was, but I remember I went down to Manhattan Central booking alone by myself. They didn't send anybody with me. I don't remember how I got down there. I don't know if I drove or if I took the train, but I was in uniform. I had no time on the job. I didn't know where Manhattan Central booking was. I had no idea where the building was. I went to the security booth at police headquarters. I walked to the security booth at police headquarters. They're not close. The security booth at police headquarters is not close to Manhattan Central booking, but that's where I went. And I knocked on the door, and the cop who was in the booth says, yeah, what's up? I said, I made my first collar. I said, I'm looking for Manhattan Central booking. And he looked, and this is a true story, he looked at my collar brass. He said, you're in the 2-8? I said, yeah. He goes, well, I'm going to tell you where it is now. He goes, but you're never going to have to ask again after this where Manhattan Central booking is.
Yeah.
And I remember that to this day. And then 7 years later, we spent a lot of time in court.
You know, it's funny when I think we were in Chicago marching, and I forgot where I was walking, but another cop was passing me, and I was trying to go around him. And one of the guys says to his friend, this guy's from the 2-8, he's got enough problems, let him go. Just from the collar brass. Because you hear that a rack of medals will get you out of something. It could cause problems too, as our old boss used to say too. But the collar brass helped a lot. And, we had a motto in the 2-8. We don't have to say it here, but it's still said, it's been passed down to us. There's nobody better than the cops in the 2-8. And, like I said, I did learn a lot. I remember when I was in the academy, my friend was going to, he had a hook. Of course I didn't. And I'm like, don't you want to go someplace busy? That's why we became cops, lock up the bad guys. 22 years old. I had no clue. And he goes, bro, my hook had me going to the 7-9. He goes, I'm going to Midtown North. He says, Midtown North is the best place to be a cop. He says, you want to walk a footpost in a ghetto with burned down buildings and stray dogs and pros everywhere? And of course, it didn't matter what I wanted because I had no hooks, but you do learn a lot. And if you look at the 2-8 now, it's beautiful, bro. I think, it started with the Apollo Theater for us. But then Magic Johnson invested in some real estate there. If you look at some of our old photos of the ghetto, where the buildings, they were bricked up with cement block, crackheads everywhere, it looks beautiful. They're all done, bro. And the property values, millions and millions and millions of dollars for, a very small apartment. It's good to see. I wish we would have worked there now, but you know what, bro? If you change anything in your career, anything, you wouldn't be here. So,
we were dreamers when we were young, but a lot of the blocks from avenue to avenue were completely vacant.
Yes, nobody lived there.
Sure, I remember the nicest per se, although it was one of the most crime-ridden blocks, was the housing block, 111th between 7th and 8th.
Yeah.
Sure, and that was a vicious block. It was it was 112.
There was 114 from 7 to 8. They told us don't go down that block either.
You're right. I'm sorry. It's 114, 7 to 8, the housing block, where the entire block was New York City Housing Authority. But it was a well-kept, the building. It was. Every building was occupied. And
brownstones, trees.
At the 117s, between 7th and 8th, which completely vacant. And I remember, listen, you could have bought one of those brownstones back then for $15. You just had to pay. You had to pay the property tax on it.
Yes.
We never I don't think anybody. Some people did, I'm sure. Some people invested in those brownstones and made a lot of money. But back in 1991 and 1992 and 1993, we never saw the light at the end of the black hole. It was laughable. Don't tell me that anybody's going to buy this brownstone. Don't tell me anyone's going to invest in this neighborhood. AIDS and the crack epidemic, they were at the height of their popularity, for lack of a better term, in the early 90s. And crack and AIDS absolutely had the 2.8 and the 3.2 in its grasp. I'll tell you right now, there wasn't a time in the early 90s that I ever thought for a second that AIDS and the crack epidemic and everything bad about society was ever going to leave the 2.8 precinct. I never thought in a million years I thought that area of the city was forever going to be a blight, forever going to be a black hole, forever. There wasn't a single new business that ever opened. There wasn't a single new restaurant that ever opened. There was, as a matter of fact, the restaurants and the bars that were open at the time, they were all from the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah, they were there a while.
And the people that went into those bars, they grew up in Harlem, and they were old timers. And we'd sit outside some of these bars, some of these nightclubs, and
Sylvia's. Remember Sylvia's?
Yeah, not so much Sylvia's. There was a Lenox Lounge.
Yeah.
A perfect example of watching the old 70s guys show up. They had the long cars, they had the fedoras, they had the polyester suits on, they had the collars out to here. I thought I was seeing a live scene from Starsky and Hutch circa 1976. They were still there. And I'll tell you right now, Paul, all my time in the 2.8, I never stepped one foot in Lenox Lounge. I never had a single incident, 911 call, anything. I've never been in that place. I don't know if it's still around. I don't know if it still exists. But the old timers in Harlem knew what the young bucks didn't. And that was how to police yourself. That was how not to have the cops involved in your business. How to be a professional. How to be a professional occupant of Harlem. We never dealt with the old timers, ever. It was the up and comers. It was the new generation. They were the people that were our age. We were in combat, for lack of a better term. We were in combat with people that were our age and saw life and society different because of where I was from and how I was raised, and where they were from and how they were raised. And looking back on it now, 30 years, I've been off the cops since 96. I'd be lying to you if I told you that I couldn't have handled things better. I'd be lying to you if I told you that I couldn't have been a more empathetic, understanding cop, because I could have. The relationships that I bridged as a cop in Harlem were relationships with people that were dying. Relationships with people that weren't worth taking to jail because they didn't care. And they became informants, for lack of a better term. I'd help them out. I'd throw them a couple bucks, or I'd get them a sandwich, or I would just look the other way if they were doing something that wasn't worth me getting involved. And from that, they might give me a little information about real crimes and real bad people doing real bad things. But that doesn't mean that looking back on it and being 55 now, I certainly can say that I didn't police back then the way I would police now.
Well, you can't today, right? One of the things we had, and we were talking about this a little bit, we both came on during Dinkins, but we also were there from Giuliani, and we had a support system, not just our fellow officers, but our sergeant, the lieutenant, the CO, the desk, the management of the police department. People would back you. They wanted you to make arrests. I remember one of the things Giuliani said when he got elected was, I want cops, not social workers. And it was a good feeling. We weren't rogue cowboys. We weren't going out doing stuff we weren't supposed to be doing. But they always looked at where your head and your heart was. And if you were trying to do well, if you were trying to do good by getting a gun collar, or, they used to like you for going after these drug dealers, they supported you. And that has been gone. And it all starts with leadership. We went from Dinkins to Giuliani. Bloomberg, I think, was okay before he went woke. Now he's apologizing for the 250s, for the stop and frisk that everyone else calls it. You know what? It kept everyone safe. There's a reason why crime went down.
We begin tonight with that stop and frisk apology from New York City's former mayor, Michael Bloomberg. He made the comments during a service at a Brooklyn church today. Many are now saying the apology is, quote, long overdue. TV 1055's Hazel Sanchez has the story.
I can't change history. However, today, I want you to know that I realized back then I was wrong, and I'm sorry.
On Sunday morning, former Mayor Mike Bloomberg stood before the Christian Cultural Center in Brooklyn and apologized for the stop and frisk policy he long supported while he ran New York City. Now that he's making a run for the White House, many New Yorkers are doubting his apology is sincere.
I got something important really wrong. I didn't understand that back then, the full impact that stops were having on the Black and Latino communities. I was totally focused on saving lives, but as we know, good intentions aren't good enough.
So we hear all the time that this country is full of incarcerated individuals, right? We have the number one mass incarceration more than any other country, and we have too many criminals. But what they fail to realize is we have too many victims. Because every person that's in or should be in a jail cell right now, victimized, God knows how many people. If you get caught in your 30s for your first homicide, you're one person. We don't know how many people you robbed, assaulted, attacked in any way. So for every perp that sits in a jail cell that, the liberals and the Democrats are so outraged about, they're forgetting about the real victims. And I can tell you that every single collar that we were involved in the 2-8, the victim was a minority. Every single one. All of these policies that the Democrats and the liberals insist on having, these animals, because they are animals, you do some of these things that they're doing to some innocent victims, are let back out onto the street, and they're going right back to the minority communities, and they're attacking more minorities. They're not really going to Soho or the white areas and attacking those people. They're going back to where they live, and they're attacking other minorities. And that it's a great sleight of hand, because they're all claiming that they care about Black and brown people, but really, if they did, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. Mayor Adams' solution is to put crack vending machines in minority neighborhoods. I think the 7-3, Brownsville, a couple of other ones, where you can go to a vending machine and click on a number and a crack pipe will fall out, or wipes or syringes. That you don't care about the people that you lead.
You won't find Doritos or Pepsi in Brooklyn's latest vending machine. Instead, Narcan and crack pipes. This machine, one of 4 the city's health department plans to install.
This also normalizes that we in treatment know that people are using, and so we're okay with that. You can use safely, get to us, and then get treatment so that you can turn your life around, and that's the goal.
The machine reportedly ran out of crack pipes in the first 24 hours. This program costing taxpayers about $750,000. Critics like former NYPD Commissioner Bill Bratton sees this as society surrendering in the war on drugs.
Instead of trying to get people away from drugs, we have policies now. We got vending machines to encourage them to stay on drugs.
Narcan vending machines are a growing trend. Pennsylvania, Texas, and Michigan already have them. New York, however, appears to be the first to distribute free crack pipes through vending machines.
Politicians don't care. And I hate to say it, but you have to care, to want to fix an issue, to want to keep a neighborhood safe. You have to have a fear yourself of being a victim, or you have to know somebody that's been a victim, and you have to see how that impacts a person's life. Politicians are protected by armed security when they tell you you can't have a firearm yourself. You can be a law-abiding citizen. Yeah, you can be you can be well-educated. The education doesn't matter. You can't have a felony. You can't, the United States Constitution provides that there is a right to bear arms. And I'm not going to sit here and be all constitutional on you. I just know what the Constitution provides to law-abiding American citizens. And I also know what politicians do to make sure that people can engage in their constitutional rights. So they're going to sit here, and they always do it. They always tell you, and I will say this: if the government tells you you don't need a gun, you need a gun. And if the government tells you you need a vaccine, you don't need a vaccine. People have to start to realize that the government is not their friend. Ronald Reagan said it best. The 7 or 8 or 9 words that are the most disturbing words to hear is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
Yeah.
And he knew it.
I think you all know that I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
There's been this theme that's been perpetrated against the American public since about 2008, 2007, specific to the time that Obama was elected president in his first term. And that's that societies, communities, they can police themselves. That the police department is nothing, or a police officer is nothing more than an infringement on your rights. And we need to get away from policing. We need to get away from police departments, and we need to bring it to a point where social workers can do the work of police officers. Community activists can do the work of police officers. If anybody and everybody can do the work of police officers, then why are we sending people to academies for 6 months? We're not getting reprogrammed in the academy. They're not taking us and changing the way we think. They're preparing us for what we're going to see because of what we've signed up to do. You can't take people that haven't had that training. You can't take people that haven't had that schooling and put them in situations that require that training. It's never going to work out favorably, ever. Neighborhoods are not going to be safer. People are not going to be safer. Taking guns away from law-abiding citizens who may step up in a situation where nobody else has a gun except him, taking guns away from those people doesn't make people safer. It makes people ready for slaughter. You just line them up. The one guy with the gun is the guy that doesn't abide by the law, or the people at the scene of the crime with the firearm. They've been doing this their whole life. They're so good at what they do that they do it over and over and over again. And the only person that's going to stop that person is somebody that has been in law enforcement and doing that over and over and over again. We're trying to wrap our head around the fact that neighborhoods are dangerous. Leftist policies of defunding the police don't work, but we continue to defund them. And somehow this is going to work out. Politicians don't care about your safety because the fear that you have, they don't have. And until politicians feel the pain of being a victim, and I wish nobody was a victim, but that's not real life. That's not real world. Until they feel what we know, what we've witnessed, I'm telling you right now, Paul, that I can't believe, and maybe I'm just lying to myself. Maybe I'm just looking at life through rose-colored glasses that don't exist. But I can't believe that even the worst leftist politician in the world, the most defund the police, anti-police politician in the world, would not change their mind if they sat in the back of a car with a Detroit police officer from 12 at night to 8 in the morning for one tour. Something has to happen for these wackos, and that's what they are, for these wackos to change their thought process and in turn change the way they handle their political life, the laws that they make, the laws that society changes. But what I'm seeing right now is there are more laws and more restrictions against the law-abiding, constitutional, understanding American than there are the criminals. New York City's never coming back. I don't care what anybody says. You cannot allow the amount of illegals into the country, into the city of New York that they have, and ever think that you're going to go collect them and send them back. Now, sure, okay. Do we get a law? Do we get a law and order president 8 months from now? I don't know. If we do policies change? Probably, because people want to see that. Are those policies going to be able to take these people out of the country? No. There's too many. They're underground. They're here to stay. Things don't get better, Paul. They get worse. And that's what needs to be said here. That's what needs to be said. You cannot institute these policies of giving credit cards, 3 meals a day, housing in hotels that you and I would never be able to afford. Right. If we wanted to go see the Christmas tree lighting and stay overnight. There's no incentive to follow the law.
Exactly.
We're watching people beat up cops. We're watching them get arrested and then released. And then we have to watch the marshals chase them across the country. You had them in New York City. You had them at the scene of the crime.
This case has generated national attention, controversy, and a manhunt. That search appears to have paid dividends with the arrests of at least some of the migrants who had skipped town. Customs Enforcement, along with the Department of Homeland Security, arrested several of the migrants accused of beating 2 NYPD officers in Times Square on January 27th. The takedowns happened yesterday at a Greyhound bus station in Phoenix, according to Fox News, which obtained this picture from an ICE source. 4 of the migrants who were released without bail after their arrests are believed to have fled for California by bus. There are no details yet about which of the migrants were arrested yesterday. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg says his office plans to present charges to the grand jury later today.
Despicable behavior.
Bragg has been heavily criticized for not requesting bail for most of the suspects arrested for the attack. He defended his decision-making on Friday.
We make decisions based on the evidence we have before us at the time. Our profound obligation is to make sure we have the right people charged with the right crimes.
Bragg said that one defendant, 24-year-old Yohenry Brito, is currently being held on bail. The NYPD's chief of patrol criticized prosecutors for not asking for bail for most of the offenders.
You touch a cop, you should go to jail. I mean, it's really that simple. But this is why it's happening. No consequences, and our cops are getting hurt out there.
An assault on a police officer, whether there's an injury, a serious injury or not, is an assault too. It's a felony. It's a B felony. You're letting these people out on B felonies, and then they're going across the country. And then the biggest news story becomes they've escaped.
Yeah,
and now we have to go track them down.
You let them out. Yeah.
You let them out, and now you're taking the money that you need to keep in the city to pay police officers, and you're sending it halfway across the country to catch guys that you had 3 days ago.
Exactly.
New York City's not getting better, Paul. I don't care what anybody says.
Well, one of the things I learned, regrettably, was I always thought that having a law and order president would change everything. And obviously Trump was who I wanted. I'm going to vote for him again. Biden, there's a million things we can go into with Biden, and I want to before you leave. But I will say one of the things I learned is, regardless of who's in the White House, almost everything comes down to the local police department, the local town, the local city council. When Trump was in the White House, BLM and Antifa were going crazy. The local mayors did not enforce any of these laws. The local mayors or the governors could have called the National Guard. The local DAs refuse to prosecute people. If you're white or a Trump supporter, you can guarantee you'll get prosecuted for everything. But if you're of a certain color, or not even color, a demographic, if you're voting Democrat, they look the other way.
Paul Hodgkins from Florida, he came to the Capitol on January 6th, attended the rally near the White House, and then marched up to the Capitol. Now, he did not engage in any violent behavior, the government says. He didn't damage any property, but Judge Randolph Moss sentenced Hodgkins to 8 months in prison and 2 years supervised release.
Went particularly easy on a vandal with an axe who smashed into a U.S. senator's office.
Even though federal sentencing guidelines suggested maybe 10 to 16 months in prison, Starks was only given probation and a fine of about $2,800. Now, here's the kicker. Take a look at this. The FBI even returned the axe back to Starks. Starks had previously posted on social media that he was a member of Antifa and that he will, quote, always attack fascists.
No one is above the law. No one.
And you don't even need a gun to step up. Look at the Marine, Daniel Penny. Puts the guy who comes onto the train who says he's going to get money today and he doesn't care if he dies doing it. He puts him in a restraint. You call it a chokehold, but he restrained him. The guy accidentally died. And this guy's facing countless years in jail. I don't know, manslaughter, 15 years, whatever it is.
Here in New York, the subway rider who put a homeless man in a fatal chokehold is free on bail tonight after being arrested on a manslaughter charge. Stephanie Gosk has late details.
The protests and calls for criminal charges were answered. Daniel Penny was arrested for killing Jordan Neely. The former Marine is accused of manslaughter in the second degree, a charge carrying a maximum 15-year sentence. Neely died after Penny put him in a chokehold on the subway nearly 2 weeks ago. A witness said Neely got on the train and started yelling that he was hungry and ready to die. According to Penny's attorney, Neely aggressively threatened his client and other people on the train, adding that he is confident that once all the facts and circumstances surrounding this tragic incident are brought to bear, Mr. Penny will be fully absolved of any wrongdoing. Penny's case will likely come down to a question of self-defense. New Yorkers are split, some calling him a heartless vigilante. Others say he is a hero.
They don't want criminals being prosecuted under any circumstances. And if you look at the way they handled COVID, that was a gift to all of the progressives because we're going to keep you locked in your house under lockdown, but we're going to use it as an excuse to say, you know what? We got to let the prisoners out because COVID's going to spread. Prison, by definition, is a lockdown. You can't get any more locked down than already being in a cell. But they let people out under the guise of COVID because it's almost like they want this chaos.
Well, this comes amid the news that more than 17,000 California inmates may be released early due to coronavirus concerns in crowded prisons. That's 70% more than previously estimated. In recent court filings, corrections officials estimated the total to be between 10 and 17,000. California Corrections Secretary Ralph Diaz is likely to block the release of about 5,000 inmates, in part because many are serving life sentences.
Explain to me how Bragg could still be in office. When those two officers were killed in the 3-2, there was a big uproar. We're going to get him out of office. How dare he? How dare he? Because his wife, when she eulogized her husband, Jason Rivera, she called him out by name.
We begin tonight with the death of Officer Wilbert Mora.
He had undergone 2 surgeries over the weekend after getting shot and ambushed while responding to a domestic call. The 27-year-old died today at NYU Langone Medical Center. His partner, 22-year-old Officer Jason Rivera, was killed at the scene on Friday night.
The system continues to fail us. We are not safe anymore. Not even the members of the service. I know you were tired of these laws, especially the ones from the new DA. I hope he's watching you speak through me right now. I'm sure all of our blue family is tired too. But I promise, we promise, that your death won't be in vain. I love you to the end of time. We'll take the watch from here.
I'm actively engaged in advocacy for is the reduction of really truly talking about the reduction of our NYPD budget and defunding a $6 billion NYPD budget.
Bragg hates cops. Bragg grew up in Harlem. Bragg has a problem with the police department. He's said it before. He's had, when he was younger, he had interactions with the police that didn't go well. Okay, fine, that stuck with him. But rather than take his position of power, because it's a powerful position, and change and make change that's good, he still has this stick up his ass about whatever happened when he was a youngster in Harlem, and he's carrying that with him. So he hates the cops. But Hochul's never going to remove him. A Democrat is never going to remove a Democrat, so that's off the table right there. So that's not happening. The only way you're not going to see Bragg anymore is to not elect him. But Manhattan, and I hate to say this, they get what they deserve. They get what they deserve because they don't understand that elections have consequences. They don't understand. You have less than a 0 chance of being elected door catcher in Manhattan or even the city of New York outside Staten Island if you're a Republican. Don't even try it. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your energy because the 4 boroughs out of the 5, they don't care about how you're going to deal with crime. That becomes a racial situation. Oh, wait a minute here. You're going to go into these impoverished neighborhoods and you're going to police? Well, yeah, unfortunately, that's what we have to do. That's how you keep crime down. Nope, I don't want to hear it.
Exactly.
When you go out there and you come up with the most lunatic thing that you and I have ever heard, it's a good chance you're going to get elected in those 4 boroughs. When you go and you say we're going to defund the police and we're going to bring in community activists and we're going to bring in shrinks and we're going to bring in people that you can tell your sob story. They're going to go into the domestic violence situation. People believe that that's going to happen, and they elect that. And when you elect that, you get lunacy, you get crime through the roof. And then I watch TV, and I don't even watch the news anymore, Paul, because I don't even know if what I'm watching is real because it's laughable. And then you get people that say we can't live like this anymore. You get people that talk about the e-bikes that people are bringing into these multiple dwellings that are burning them down to the ground and killing 15 people at a time. And the illegals on all of these e-bikes. And all of these e-bikes, they're not registered, they're not insured, they don't have a license plate on them. They can hit and run you. And there's not a chance in hell that they're ever going to be caught because the video cameras they have in the city aren't going to pick up a bike with no tag. But make sure you pay your red light summons. Make sure you pay your speed camera. Make sure you pay your parking summons because Paul Manicone and Kenny Specht, they're easily identifiable. Because we've registered our vehicles and we've insured our vehicles and we have a New York State tag on our vehicles. And if we pass that red light, that summons is coming to our house. People, they stand on the TV and they say, we can't live like this anymore. When is this going to change? Newsflash, it's never going to change. Bragg is always going to hate cops. He's always going to lock up the U.S. Marine. He's always going to let the illegals who beat the cops up go. It's never going to it's never going to change. You had a chance. New York City had a chance. Curtis Sliwa. I don't know. I listen to him. I understand his right on crime policies because they are. I'm not saying he couldn't do that job. It's like anything else, Adams was what? He was a New York State senator. Okay, so he had political experience behind him, but his political experience, he didn't use it to get out there and help the city of New York.
No.
He can't get out of his own way. This is a guy who's a known racist, and a known racist, I mean, there's audio tape of him when he was a supervisor in the New York City Police Department calling white cops crackers.
I got it. It was on. I put it on YouTube. He's proud of it.
Every day in the police department, I kicked those crackers' ass, man. I was unbelievable in the police department when you keep 100 blacks in law enforcement. Became a sergeant, a lieutenant, and a captain. You know the story. Some people all of a sudden trying to reinvent me. But the reality is, what I was then is who I am now. They know me. They know what I'm about.
Bragg and Adams, they're aligned.
Yeah.
They're aligned. And Adams can make a phone call and say, you can't let these guys out. Adams can make a phone call and say, not only can't you let these guys out, but we have to use them as an example that you can't do this in the city of New York. So what I want you to do is I want you to perp walk them, just like they do Donald Trump, just like they do the Marine on the subway. When they put him in handcuffs and they walk him outside a precinct, and they and the RMP that they're putting him in is 1.5 miles away, done on purpose. Just like during the anti-COVID rallies in Staten Island, when the cops went in and locked up old people, and put them in handcuffs and walked them 1 mile to the car. That's a perp walk.
Yeah,
that's done so that people who see you on TV formulate an opinion about you, even though they don't know you. So no, Adams can make a phone call and he can call Bragg and say, no, you perp walk these guys, because we need to set an example that this is not going to be tolerated. Never happened. Adams is worse by a country mile than anybody we ever had, just because of his 30 years as a police officer.
But in those 30 years, dude, I heard he got 8 collars, and all he did, I understand, but all he did, and like you just mentioned, he was a transit cop, right? So for those who don't know, in the early 90s, Transit, Housing, and New York City Police Department were 3 separate agencies. So there would be no opportunity to ever run into him. But yet, while we were on a different agency, in a different borough, in a different command, he still had that reputation. Watch out, because he hates white cops. And of course it was allowed, it was embraced, and the way they handle cops in general today, there's no union anymore. You're allowed to say and do anything you want to them. And it's not, I always feel, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, when I went to work as a cop, I never really feared that, oh, today I might get killed. Most of the stress that I took from the police department was always from within. I don't believe cops are no longer with us today and are dying by suicide because they fear the perp on the street. Most cops, most good cops, I would say all good cops, don't care about running after someone with a gun or rolling around with someone on the floor. What stresses us to the point where we can't take it anymore comes from within. They're changing my RDOs. They're changing my tours. They're transferring me to the 110 when I'm perfectly comfortable staying where I am. They're mandatory overtime. I can't go home for 2 weeks. Little money, CCRB, an overzealous CCRB now, who can go into your camera and look at the last 8 or 10 hours on patrol. And even though you don't have a complainant, they can look at footage and generate a complaint by saying you were discourteous or you did something that you shouldn't have. And now, when you and I were on the job, CCRB didn't have that much power. They were almost ignored. I went down, I think, once or twice. And I remember you telling me a story where you were down there without me, and some guy comes in and they're like, "Oh, Jimmy, how are you?" And they're hanging out. You know, that like he was there all the time. But now they have the power to fire you. They hate police. People who hate cops should not have that much power over them and have the ability to get them terminated. Eric Dim, I mentioned. Eric and John, they run the podcast. I'll put a link to it. The New York's Finest Retired and Unfiltered. If you have a chance, visit them. They're great guys. They know everything about NYPD. He had 8 sets of charges from our job, all generated from the CCRB. And eventually he was forced to retire because of that. We didn't live under that microscope. We thought we had stress, but we weren't followed. We didn't have iPhone cowboys.
Do something. Do something, nigga. That's what time it is. Just the time it is, nigga. I make them niggas pack your dumb ass up. I will make them pack you up, nigga. Watch it. Watch it. Pussy. That's right. That's right, nigga. Don't touch me, nigga. It's that time, nigga. It's that time, pussy. Let that white man get away. Let the white man walk out the door and they'll choke out one of yours. Huh? Oh, he ain't one of yours, right? He ain't one of yours, but that white man wasn't either. He wasn't blue.
Yo, he just followed orders, dog. That's
he
all he
wasn't
does.
blue, nigga. He wasn't blue. If you gonna do something for black people, at least get the killer, nigga. If you gonna do something for black people, get the killer, nigga. Get the killer. Yo, y'all let him walk in the gate. Hey, you ain't mad, nigga. Hey, do you feel like an idiot with that shit on? Because the blood is still on your hands, pussy. Y'all let him walk out the door, pussy. Y'all let him walk out the door, nigga. Yeah.
You and I know that if we got assaulted, if we got our ass kicked at work, that perp would have wished he did not do that. Right? Sure. And at the very least, if you had an injury, I'm not saying, I fell and I hurt, whatever. I'm saying, like, if you got a black eye, somebody broke your nose and you were a cop, you knew the DA was going to write that up. There was no question about it. Today, you got cops being shot at, and they're not even charging attempted murder. They're charging assault, aggravated assault.
Justice isn't blind anymore. I don't work for the the agencies in the city of New York that keep track of the amount of police officers. I heard, I could be wrong, I heard that the proper operating number for the New York City Police Department is around 43,000 uniformed members. I heard it's down to 29,000. You cannot police. I don't care who you are. You cannot say that New York City is the safest big city in the nation. It's bullshit. But people that watch CNN and people that just believe what they hear on TV without doing their own research, they believe it. It's a lie. You cannot lose 15,000 uniformed police officers and feel or think that you're properly policing the biggest city in the nation and doing it safely. You're not. You got guys that are working doubles. You got guys that are working ordered overtime. You got guys that they're tired. People that are paying attention, they're not taking this job anymore, Paul. When you and I got on the cops, and I have no problem that times change, but when you and I got on the cops, it was one test every 5 years. And everybody from Long Island, where I grew up, and everybody from upstate New York, 55, 65,000 young kids showed up on that one day every 5 years, and they took the cop test. Now it's a Monday through Friday walk-in test in Washington Street in New York City. You can go.
Nobody wants
Monday through Friday and take a test and somehow be hired in the academy in 8 months. Took me almost 3 years. I remember they sent investigators, New York City detectives, out to my neighborhood. I lived 40 miles from Manhattan. 40 miles. They sent 2 cops out to my neighborhood to talk to my neighbors. Does that happen anymore? I don't know. Through attrition, through quitting, through guys retiring early, or just walking away, can you still do that level of investigative work to hire one guy? No, you can't. You need a body to fill it. You need a body to fill a uniform now. You need a uniform to fill a car. That's where we are. That's where we are. These guys know they're not supported. These guys know that, like you said, the camera reels getting sent to CCRB, that the person who they're interacting with on the camera didn't have a problem with the way they were treated. But now some guy with some guy 4 weeks later with 5 hours to look at this video over and over and over and push rewind says, oh no, that's a problem. Call this guy in. Call this guy in. You have 29,000 cops when you need 43,000. Call this guy in for what? To tell him he's getting hooked up? To tell him he's getting suspended? Okay, fine. I'm out.
You know that they have to now give out business cards, right?
Business cards. Business cards. And I see the video. I see this asshole. I don't know what his name is. He's one of these antagonistic bastards who goes around to all the cops, shines video cameras in their cop cars and walks around into the precincts and says, oh, it's a public area. I'm allowed to do this. These losers, these cop antagonists who hide under the guise, yeah, okay, you're constitutionally protected. I get it. You're the first one to yell when a real constitutional protection is being violated. You're the first one to yell. That's how it should have happened. That guy's no good. You don't. The line between right and wrong is so blurred now, Paul. The line between good and bad is so blurred that people actually believe that bad behavior is good. People actually believe that sticking a camera in a cop car or walking around. No, I don't care who you are. A parking lot of a precinct is not a public area. It's a secure area. You don't belong there. Because we know, common sense tells us that if you're hanging around the cop car or you're hanging around the parking lot, you're up to no good. You can't tell me that you have no reason to be there, and whatever reason you are there, it's all good.
Dude, they go over and try to open the cops' doors. They check all the RMPs.
All right, guys. So before we go inside the 121st precinct here, let's take a look around at some of the vehicles funded by the taxpayers that are outside here.
Can I help you, sir? Can I help you?
Who are you, sir?
Anything with the cars? Why are you trying to check the cars if they're open?
Can I help you with anything, sir?
I'm asking you. Can I help you?
I don't know who you are.
I
don't know who you are, sir.
I just saw you touching the back door of that car. Why are you messing with this armpit?
Sir, I would like to know who you are. I don't know.
Lieutenant Conway.
Lieutenant Conway?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't need any help, Lieutenant.
Okay, thank you. You can't touch the cars, all right? You can film.
Why can't I touch the car?
Because I don't know if you're trying to break in and steal something. Okay.
Why would I break into a vehicle?
I don't know. People do it all the time.
Well, that's not my intention here.
But,
I'm just checking to make sure everything's okay.
Awesome. I appreciate your help.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, have a great day, Lieutenant. You take care. So this is the lieutenant's vehicle over here. You can see the lights right over here. Just taking a look at the vehicles. What's the big deal? There's nothing wrong with that, Lieutenant, is there? Just because I put my hand on the vehicle doesn't mean anything. I'm not trying to break into the vehicle. These vehicles belong to us, the people. I'm just making sure that they're okay, making sure that the doors are locked so no one else steals anything from them. Let's check this one out. We got to make sure right here that we're up to date on inspection.
Lieutenant Chiasano.
Hey, Lieutenant, how are you?
Nice to meet
I was just speaking to another lieutenant.
So, I don't mind you guys, like you said, you hang out here, you got to film, do what you want to do. The only thing I ask is just please don't yank on the door handles.
Oh, I was just making sure that they weren't open.
Just please, yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
If
just
you could do
checking.
that for me, I appreciate it.
No, but I like to check on all the. I like to check on all the taxpayer vehicles, make sure that they're being properly secured, safety purposes and everything. Because as you can see there, Lieutenant, that vehicle, it looks like it's in service right here, but it has a huge crack in the windshield. Could be unsafe for someone to drive. Probably should be taking care of
I'm
that.
saying, I'm Lieutenant Chiasano. I'm just advising you, please stop pulling on the door handles.
Yeah, I'm just checking to make sure they're open. That's all. They're not
Would you
open.
like a contact card?
A contact card?
My contact card.
Then the cop gets out and says, "What are you doing here?" And all of a sudden, it's this big 22-minute YouTube video, and I'm reading the comments, and people are like, "Yeah, fuck that cop. Yeah, good job showing the bully."
Yeah,
cop.
thank you for doing what you're doing. People are saying, thank you for doing what you're doing. This is great. We need people like you. I'm like, dude, number one, you need a life. And number two, you're like, I can't describe it any other way. They're troublemakers.
They're troublemakers. There's enough, and what they don't know, Paul, because they're unemployed. what they don't know because they're unemployable, what they don't know because they've never had anything in their life that they've had to show up for that meant anything, is that these guys have enough on their plate. They have enough on their plate. Problems and issues and crime, even if you look to hide from it, they're going to find you once or twice or 3 times on an 8.5-hour tour. I don't need you sticking your camera in my face, making an issue where there is none. I'm doing a New Year's Eve detail. I'm doing the Israeli Day Parade detail. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? You're making a problem. The Constitution does not provide you the right to make a problem. It doesn't. But like you said, we watch these stupid videos, and I don't watch them anymore, but you read the comments, and the cop's a bad guy, and good job bringing light to the...
Yeah.
And Paul, 20 years ago, if you put that video on, you'd get 1,000 people saying, I'll kick your ass. You get 1,000 people saying, you're out of your mind. You get 1,000 people saying, you're a troublemaker. 20 years later, he's a hero. He's a hero because he's breaking people's balls over nothing.
It's disgusting. Yes, exactly. And they're going out and looking. Like you said, they're going out and looking. I'm not saying if a cop stops you, you don't have a right to film it. But you're going up to these cops while they're on patrol, just on a foot post by themselves. You're getting up in their face.
Sure.
You're harassing. But those are laws that are broken that they could be and they should be collared for.
Absolutely.
Excuse me. But there comes a time where the cop realizes,
he's going to
do
lose.
I want the headache? Do I want to get sued? Do I want to have to go to CCRB?
Yep.
Do I need to get a lawyer? Do I got to transfer in, or I'm about to get promoted, or I'm about to go to the fire department? Do I want something on my record? I could just ignore it and hopefully it'll go away. But they follow these cops and harass them.
You got a partner, yeah. That's sexy. I like the fact that you got a partner. You 60 credit bitch, you're dirty. 2354 for this dirty motherfucker. Get the fuck out the fucking hood, man. And take you with you. Even the people don't want to see you here, bitch. Get the fuck out. Move! You can eat red lights, right? You can eat red lights? Eat this bitch right now. Go ahead, eat this red light right now, asshole. Woman beater. You're quick to get home, right? When you're done with your officer right next to you, you're quick to go home and beat your wife. You piece of shit. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Hey,
I'm 55. I'm too old. You're not changing my mind. You're not changing my attitude. I have enough friends. I don't need any more friends. I don't need popularity. I'm not looking for clicks. I support cops. If you don't, then that's your business, but stay the fuck away from me. Because you probably couldn't beat yourself out of a wet paper bag. You'd be the first one to call 911 screaming like a bitch if somebody approached you without a mask on in Lowe's. I know who you are. I know who you are. I know what you're about. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. There's plenty of them out there, Paul. This is the societal change that unfortunately we're in right now. These are the people. And I'm not painting everybody with the same brush here. I'm saying, when I say these, I'm saying the society we're in now. These are the people that hate Trump. And I'm not going to make this a pro-Trump speech here. I'm just going to say, what has Trump personally done to anybody that they hate him the way they do? Did Trump come to their house one day, one night, knock on their door or break into their house, throw a party, leave a mess, sleep with their wife? What's the issue? And they're the funniest videos in the world, Paul, because I will click on those and I will watch the people that
they get stumped, right?
Oh, what's your problem with Trump? Trump or Biden? Biden. Why? Trump's bad. Why is Trump bad?
Just like the things he says about women and like the racism.
Like what?
What's the biggest thing that Trump has said? What is the biggest action he's taken that's really pushed you to want to come protest?
The list is endless. I don't think I could come up with a single one.
Can you give me one specific thing that he's done? What's the biggest thing to you specifically he's done?
No.
His entire person.
the persona that he is, everything about him, just to me. Yes, everything about him. He just lies. Everything he does is.
What's one of the biggest lies that really angered you?
Michael, do you have something?
What is one of the most divisive things that Trump has said to you that really pushed you to want to come protest today?
I can't think right now.
No, just one thing, just one big thing that Trump did.
Babe, answer that. Answer that for her.
Maybe another exit.
Let's go there.
No? Just one thing?
I've never in my entire life ever seen anybody put together a legitimate reason, verbalize a legitimate, reasonable. I'm a reasonable person. Give me a reasonable avenue to pursue. Give me a reasonable reason to say, hey, you know what? I might look into that. You might be right. They're lunatics. They are lunatics. $1.89 gas, bad. Great stock market, bad. Never in war, bad. I thought Trump was getting us into World War III. We have soldiers being killed by drones. Can you imagine that? Drones. Drones are dropping grenades on American bases in the Middle East, and we're doing nothing about it. And the people that are doing this, they're so far in. The depth of their knowledge is limited to putting a machine gun on the back of a Toyota 4Runner, and yet they're killing American troops and they're getting away with it. And nobody realizes that this didn't happen in the 4 years Trump was president. It's not about whether you like him or not. You have to be able to look past that and know that you paid $1.89 for gas, that you could put 4 bags of groceries in your cart for what 2 bags are costing now, that you didn't have 7.5 million illegals enter this country.
In 3 years.
Stop with the asylum seekers. Stop with the term asylum seekers. There have been jails that have been emptied in Central America, in Nicaragua, in Mexico, and these people have been pushed into this country. These problems that this country has now were the problems that the countries in Central America had. And the presidents of those countries, they know the border's open. Get out of here. Go. Leave. They're here now, and they're bad people. And the gang mentality, you can't put somebody from a gang in Nicaragua in the same room with somebody who's in a gang in Mexico, because they're going to kill each other. And they're going to kill everybody around them. And they're trying to house these multicultural gangs together under one roof in these stupid tents in New York City. And they don't think there's going to be a problem. The problem's not staying inside the tent, Paul. The problem's not staying inside the hotel. The problem's going out on the street. And the problem's in the communities now. And that is never going to change. It's never going to get better. It's never going to be reversed. So how much longer do we continue to allow this to happen? Everybody talks about, what type of world are we going to leave our grandchildren? Who's going to be the man to step up and say, this is bad now, and it's going to be way worse 20 years from now? This change of criminal activity in this country is all post 9/11. It's all post 9/11. Everybody talks about, well, hey, listen, we don't want to see the buildings come down again. I don't want that to happen, but I would love to see the way this country rallied after September 11th.
Dude, did you ever think that you would live in this country and see people, mostly on college campuses, protesting in support of Hamas and other terrorist groups?
No, not Hamas. I didn't think that there was such a anti-Jewish sentiment in this country. I'm not surprised, but I didn't see it coming. But for years now, I mean, if you read my Facebook, for years and years and years now, I have said that college campuses in this country are breeding grounds. Breeding grounds for mind-altering anti-American liberalism. Bad. And you know what? Some of them are publicly funded, but you know what? Nobody has enough balls to remove the funding. You know, the only reason the lady from Harvard finally stepped down was because one of the graduates there is a billionaire who's Jewish.
Yeah, and he said, "I'm not."
Yeah,
No more
money talked in
donations.
that particular situation. Money would talk across the board if these institutions lost their public funding, but the public funding comes from liberal governments. They're in on it. I don't think this country has anything to be proud of with the anti-Semitism that exists in it. I think that it's you can hate who you want to hate. It's not a question of that at all. But if you don't see the difference, everybody has a right to exist, Paul. I'm not, people in Palestine have a right to exist, and people in Israel have a right to exist. But when you can't see the difference, that one of the participants are taking children and women off the street and killing them, and the other one isn't, then if you can't see immediately where your allegiance should lie, to me, it's not a religious issue. I get it. It's Islam against Judaism. I get it. You can't put those two religions in the same room. But you cannot support people. You can't call them people and support their right to live when they're dropping out of the sky at concerts with seats and a fan strapped to the back of them and a parachute and killing women and taking them and putting them in the back of pickup trucks and then videoing it. You've lost the moral high ground. You've lost the moral low ground. You've lost the ability to fight for your right to exist.
We should limit how many rounds a weapon can hold. Why in God's name should an ordinary citizen be able to purchase an assault weapon that holds 30-round magazines, fire hundreds of bullets in a matter of minutes? There's no reason someone needs a weapon of war with 100 rounds, 100 bullets that can be fired from that weapon. Who in God's name needs a weapon with 100 rounds in a chamber? Nobody needs that. Nobody needs that.
In my opinion, if that's the situation that you want to show the world, I have no time for that bullshit. I have no time for anybody who supports that bullshit. None at all. None. There comes a time that enough is enough. And if you have these radical thoughts that make you believe that it's okay to just arbitrarily kill the weakest people in the population, you want to fight, go soldier against soldier. You want to fight, go technology against technology. They know they're not going to win. They're not winning when they're dropping out of the sky in parachutes with a seat and a fan strapped to their back. They're not. They're behaving in a way that's so brutal and barbaric that you don't have a right to exist. And the fact that college campuses have all of these hundreds and thousands of videos of pro-Hamas support, these people they don't know what they don't know, Paul. They have no idea. They just want to be loudmouth bigots, complain about everything. America sucks. I'm a white apologist. My parents suck for putting me in this college. Everything sucks to them. They think they want to live in a cave. They think they can be gay in an Islamic country. They don't have a clue what they don't know. Not a clue.
Yeah. Going back to when we were cops, and I'll tie it into today, we would talk about this often, that a lot of the children in the 2-8 were being raised by their grandparents because their parents were gone, in jail, dead. Most of the time they were addicted to drugs. And we always said, what happens when the grandparents aren't here anymore? And what happens to those children? Are they going to stick around long enough so that they could be raised properly? Because they're going to get older and replace what's there now because their parents are no longer here. I feel like it's kind of the same thing with this country, where you and I now in our 50s, we could, I talk to my kids all the time and they love this country and they're great patriots. And I would like to think I raised them the right way. But as we start getting up in age into our 60s and 70s, look at what's replacing us on the college campuses. Look at the brainwashing that's going on with our corrupt media. And, this woke nonsense, it's in law. We talked about Bragg and other DAs. It's in medicine, where you have the Hippocratic Oath now has to acknowledge white supremacy and marginalized groups.
We, the students of the University of Minnesota Twin Cities Medical School class of 2026, we commit to uprooting the legacy and perpetuation of structural violence deeply embedded within the healthcare system. We recognize inequities built by past and present traumas rooted in white supremacy, colonialism, the gender binary, ableism, and all forms of oppression.
It really is everywhere. And
Paul, I saw a medication commercial last night. I tried to remember this for this podcast. Not everybody in the world can take every medication. Some people, you can't have that medication. The commercial actually said, you ready for this? If you were female at birth, this medication is not recommended. Telling people that if you are a male and you identify as a female, it's best that you not come in and ask for this medication because it's not something that's going to work for you. This is where we are, that they have to tell people that for a moment of your life, you're going to have to recognize what you were born as, because this is not a medication you can take. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? You have to.
You know what? Why can't we just? We talk about a mental crisis, right? These people are suffering. And I think the worst thing you can do is to acknowledge and give into it. If you're a man and you think that you're a woman and you're willing to get a hole drilled into you, or a body part cut off, depending on which gender you think you should be, it's insane. That I blame the doctors, because it's insane that you would actually find someone this money hungry, because it is a business, to perform these barbaric surgeries. But what's worse than doing that and giving in to mental illness and acknowledging that, yeah, you're a woman, even though we know that you're not. What's worse than that is that now they're doing it to children. And you're somehow a bigot if you don't agree. There's a bill in California and Illinois that will now jail the parents if you refuse to get your minor child a sex change. You can go to jail.
I don't understand the allegiance, the allegiance that women have towards the Democratic Party. The allegiance, and I get it, it comes down to abortion rights. My body, my choice. Republicans are pro-life, Democrats are pro-choice. And I'm not going to get involved in the pro-choice, pro-life conversation. But what I am going to say is that Democrats promote freely and with so much support men and women's sports. And if a female speaks out against it, then they're condemned by the left. The same left that supposedly hangs their hat on protecting women's rights.
That's how you know it's all bullshit.
Shouldn't a woman have the right not to get her head bashed in by a male wrestler? Shouldn't a woman have a right, somebody who's done athletics her whole life, to compete against her sexual peers and not some dude who can't compete against his? So he drops down to the female class, grows long hair, and all of a sudden he's 6'4", and he's beating you by 2.5 yards in a pool. The worst male athlete is probably, and this isn't sexist, but the worst male athlete is probably the worst male athlete would fall no lower than the first third of a female in a particular sport. Why are you supporting taking away the dreams of somebody who's worked so hard? Are we going to start putting physically able people into the Special Olympics? Are we going to allow that? Because that's what this is akin to. Are we going to say, well, this guy's not a super athlete with his 12th grade team, so let him play softball with the Special Olympics and protect that? I would hope that there would be an outrage if we let physically able people participate in physically disabled sports. Why doesn't that outrage exist when you're having why is the male being protected by the left? They don't have any right. I don't care what anybody says. And you're crazy and you're a loon if you protect that type of behavior. Barack Obama, I don't care what anybody says, he was at the forefront of allowing people to use the restroom for what they identified themselves to be. No, that's a crime. That's a crime. And real men, I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, a liberal, if you're a real man and a man goes into the restroom that your daughter walked in, you're going to go in there and you're going to yank him out by his neck, because real men in their DNA is to protect their children, not to follow this lunatic social experiment of I identify as a female, so that's where I'm going to go. And then make it a crime to stop that person from doing that.
Yes.
There are jurisdictions in this country, whether they're towns or counties or states, that have this lunacy law that you can use the restroom for what you identify. That's when a civilized society starts losing the fabric of their country. That's when a civilized society stops being civilized. And if you support that, then I don't want to know from you. You're a clown. There is no supporting that. You know, there's so many political issues, Paul, that don't affect me, whether I agree with them or not. There are so many issues that Democrats and liberals feel one way about that I feel completely about, but I can still deal with them. I can still be around them. I cannot be around anybody who thinks that there's justification behind that at all. As a matter of fact, I want to know your criminal background, because you're probably a kid toucher. You're probably a kid toucher.
One of the things I often tweet when you see some of the stuff come out on the news about these trans men who think they're women, a lot of them are getting arrested for exactly what you just talked about.
You said it earlier. It's an illness that we should be spending more time trying to. I don't know if fixing's the right word. I don't think you fix people. I think that you try to learn what the issue is and see what's available to rectify the problem, because it is a problem. Now, you and I, as cops, we did the gay parade in Manhattan. It was a detail. I could care less, bro. Could care less. I stood there and I did the gay parade, and whatever happened that day happened. There was no crime. I don't care. I don't care who's gay. Paul, I got a news flash for you. I don't care if you cross-dress. I don't care what anybody does.
Thank God.
What?
Thank God, because I got something to tell you.
What, you cross-dress?
Trying to make a joke. Oh, you got me snorting. Go ahead.
I don't care. What I care about is what impact does it have on children? What impact does it have on the future of our children to be children? When you're a 5-year-old doesn't know straight or gay. A 5-year-old doesn't know boy or girl.
They don't know race either.
They know it if you're going to put some stupid unicorn book in their hand and teach them how Frankie wants to be Francis, and being Francis is better than being Frankie. And Frankie's afraid that he won't have any friends, but oh, look, he found a whole town of Francis. And no, because you're putting things into children's minds that shouldn't be there. You're indoctrinating them. That's what you're doing.
Yes.
You're indoctrinating them so that when they can make their own decision, this has been a seed that's been in their mind for so long that they don't believe they are who they should have been.
Well, my heart says that the way I feel most myself is to go by the name Fred. That's because I'm non-binary, and Fred is the name that fits me best. And I also use they and them, because calling me a she or a he doesn't feel right to me.
Oh, I didn't know that. No wonder you've been struggling. How could you lead the herd without being yourself? Oh, I'm sorry I used the wrong name and pronouns.
And Paul, growing up, I never saw this. I never saw this. Growing up, I knew gay people. Growing up, I knew, but I never met anybody in my life who struggled being born a boy and they're still a boy, and being born a girl and they're still a girl. And rather than continue to feed and nurture that, we need to let people know that you are who you are. And like you said, these draconian operations that these doctors are participating in, you're never getting it back. If it's cut off, you're not getting it back. If it's drilled into, you're not closing it up. You're not doing it again. And then go and study these people who have done these. I guarantee you the higher percentage of them regret ever doing it. Regret not having another avenue to pursue. Regret not having somebody to talk to that could talk them out of it. They regret the whole thing. And they feel lied to. And they feel like if somebody had stepped in and done something, they wouldn't have done what they did.
Layla Jane was born a girl.
Layla Jane experienced a host of medical issues in her youth. Her mother, who is bipolar, expressed to these physicians and therapists that her daughter might be bipolar, but she actually never received any diagnosis or treatment for that. The family went to one physician who, after less than a 2-hour appointment, green-lighted the hormone therapy, and in a similarly or even shorter period of time, a plastic surgeon signed off after one visit on removing her breasts.
When parents of trans-identified kids are referred to specialized gender clinics, they're often told that they're going to get comprehensive, multidisciplinary mental health assessments. We know that that's not true. In practice, these kids were put on a fast track to medical transition.
Layla is now 18 and is fighting back, so this does not happen to anyone else.
My name is Prisha Mosley. I was a 15-year-old girl when the trans community found me. Already diagnosed with multiple mental illnesses, including anorexia, a body dysmorphic disorder, and borderline personality disorder, a trauma disorder, I was easy to manipulate and convince that I had been born in the wrong body. I was told that this was the reason for all of my mental and emotional distress.
The gender specialist I was taken to see told my parents that I needed to be put on puberty-blocking drugs right away. They asked my parents a simple question: would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? This was the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care.
But is this the document we're talking about? You needed this letter signed by a therapist to open up the door for you to get these medical treatment. Is this the document that we're talking about earlier?
Yes, it is.
And it took you how long to get this?
30 minutes.
The ideology that has become dominant at these clinics is that trans kids know who they are, and therefore to question them, to ask basic therapeutic questions like, could your gender dysphoria or gender identity have been triggered by some other event in your life? Basic questions of screening are completely taboo in these circles. But the truth is that parents don't have much of a choice in the matter, and doctors are telling parents in front of their distressed children, if you don't consent to the use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, your child is going to die by suicide.
But all of a sudden, if you step in, you're labeled, I don't know what, you're labeled a MAGA. A
bigot, a transphobe.
Yeah, a transphobe. I could care less what people do. Could care less. As long as we're not putting men inside children's bathrooms, I don't care.
Well, children was always the bridge too far, no matter what, not just about trans issues, but it was always leave the children out of it. And that has slowly, really kind of quickly, if you think about it, changed where it's suddenly okay. And not only has it changed to, yeah, we could talk to children about this, but we can alter these children's bodies, and we will. But now it's gone, like I was just saying, to an extreme where we're going to put you in jail if you don't do this to your child. And I think you were saying, like, you can't understand why people do this. I think that at the heart of it, number one, Rush Limbaugh said this. He said, I am so glad I'm not a liberal, because you would have to spend your entire day angry. You're angry at police, at the military, at Trump. You're pissed off about the weather. You're pissed off all the time about something. And I believe at the heart of it, with this woke ideology, is just anger. People who hate the country. So they find our social fabric and they try to pull the thread of it to change everything about us. They hate Christianity. They are offended if you wish someone a Merry Christmas. They hate white people. They hate police. If boys are boys, boys will be boys, and girls will be girls. No. We're going to change that too. They spend their entire day changing everything that this country stands for.
That's because they don't know any better, Paul. You know, like Brittany Griner. Brittany Griner doesn't want to stand for the national anthem. Okay, great. That's your flag in the sand.
She still feels that way?
I'm sorry?
She still feels that way?
No. Spend 8 months in a Russian jail. You'll come back here. You'll be standing for the national anthem, you know? I hate a cop. I hate a cop told somebody's in my front yard at 4 o'clock in the morning trying to get through my window. Then I have no problem. The first person I call is the person I hate. These people don't know what they don't know because they have no life experience. They look like, I'll say it. I don't care. This may get me banned, or they look like they dressed themselves in a closet. What are you wearing? What I don't understand. You want to be left alone. That's the best. They want to be left alone, but they have all these. They want so much attention brought to them. You did it. You did it. You went out there and you screamed and you yelled about your rights that were being violated. Then you asked them what rights. They don't have any answer. There's no violation taking place. There's nobody standing next to them. You understand? There's nobody harassing them. But like you said, they're angry about everything. They always feel like they're being followed, they're being watched, they're being harassed. You know what it is, Paul? They're being left alone. And that's the problem they have. When I say they, I talk about the woke ideology. When I say they, I talk about the men who want to be women to go into children's dressing rooms. Their behavior has always been ignored. They never gained traction. The only way they gain traction is by dressing in a closet, walking out with the clothes that scream, look at me, hair that screams, look at me, signs that they hold up that scream, look at me. You don't like Trump, don't vote for him. Don't vote for him. That's what we have in this country. You don't like Trump, don't vote for him. You have to stand in some public square screaming, my body, my choice. My body, my choice. Like Trump did something to you?
Except when it comes to the vax. That all went out the window. My body, my choice. I want body autonomy. Leave my body alone. I decide what I do to my body. But I have no problem you forcing your child down and jabbing that into their arm.
Sure.
Same people. It depends on the issue. Really. It has nothing to do with body autonomy.
Before the vaccine death started, you had to answer the question. If you wanted to go out, if you wanted to go to a public concert, if you wanted to go, are you vaccinated? You had to answer the question. Not only did you have to answer the question, you had to show a card. Cards.
Insane.
Europe. Nazi-occupied Europe, circa 1938. You have to show cards. But now that people are dying, you can't ask. Now, how dare you ask if they were vaccinated? Wait a minute here. 2 years ago, I couldn't go anywhere and I'm not vaccinated, and I'm never getting vaccinated. Not a chance in hell, ever. 2 years ago, I couldn't go anywhere because I didn't have a card to present. I had to say that I was vaccinated or not. Now, if somebody dies, you're like, well, were they vaccinated? How dare you ask that?
Yeah.
Oh, stop. My body, my choice when it comes to abortion, but nobody's choice when it comes to making a decision for themselves medically on what I'm going to take and what I'm not going to take. And the fake outrage, because that's all it was, the fake outrage and the fear of the unvaccinated are going to die in the winter of death. Come on.
Many of us are frustrated with the nearly 80 million Americans who are still not vaccinated.
You are the problem. It is the unvaccinated who are the problem, period, end of story.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
This continues to be a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
It's the unvaccinated who are the threat.
The people who are not getting vaccines, who are believing the lies on the internet instead of science, it's time to start shaming them. What else? Or leave them behind.
Even if you don't want to, get your vaccine so you don't ever kill anybody with COVID.
This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
This is becoming a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Yes, it will protect you, but honestly, it's not for you. It's so you don't kill other people. It's so you don't spread it to other people. Because how could you live with yourself if you knew that you had done that?
It is, as we've said, a pandemic and an outbreak of the unvaccinated.
Most of all, it is not for you. It is to keep you from getting it and then spreading it.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
You're basically punishing the vaccinated for the sins of the unvaccinated.
Delta is taking a huge toll on the unvaccinated, a group that includes children and people acting like children. And the rest of us are starting to get pissed off.
Get a shot. Is your fear of the shot really more scary to you than the prospect that you are going to be a vector, spreading a fatal virus to people around you? If you don't get that shot, just get it.
Two-year-olds should have been required to wear masks. It would be child abuse for parents not to do that.
That gets straight. I got my shot. I did. I'm so excited.
Vaccine! What are you looking at? Keep it on your face. You gotta keep it on your face so we go outside. There you go. Thanks.
Freedom. I have the freedom to kill you with my COVID. No, I mean, come on. Freedom.
Vaccine!
Well, who's going to jail over this? It's all out there now. The studies are everywhere, Paul. The studies are everywhere. This was bad stuff. Who's going to jail? Google Fauci. Google Fauci. The last article you're going to find was 3 weeks ago. This is a guy you couldn't swing a dead cat 2.5 years ago and not see 5 times a day. All over your social media feed, all over the TV, all over the papers, everywhere. Well, guess what? I have a news flash. COVID still exists today, and it's not killing people. So did it really kill people 3 years ago? Because no one's getting vaccinated anymore. Fauci's gone. You can't find him anymore. It's the same situation just 3 years later. What were we afraid of? This government and the medical community, they separated families. They separated family. I begged people, Paul. I begged people who considered going to the hospital. I said, please don't go to the hospital. But I don't feel well. I said, do you know anyone who died of COVID at home in their living room? They said, no. I said, do you know anyone who went to the hospital and came out dead? They're like, yeah. I'm like, there's your answer. There's your answer. They would take you at the front door. If you were the one that was being brought in, they would take you at the front door. Remember that movie Outbreak with Dustin Hoffman and the monkey that bites everybody? One in the That's what we were living in. They couldn't, no family members. No, we're going to take your loved one at the front door. You're going to be dismissed. You're not allowed to come in. And 4 years later, we're going to call you and tell you they died. Now, there was nobody there to advocate for them. Nobody there to witness the medical procedures that were being performed. Nobody. You walked in alive. You came out dead. That's a fact. People can tell me all day long, oh, your tinfoil hat's too tight. Fine. I have no problem wearing it, because 3 years later, if you're not reading what's coming out, and it's coming out now, and even the CNNs and the Newsdays and the News 12s, the people that push this, they're reporting it now. For people, it's too late. For a lot of people, it's too late. But I just sit back and I see how we are a society that believes everything we hear. Did anybody in their life ever meet Fauci? Did anybody in their life ever meet anybody from the CDC? But whatever they told these people to do, they did. And they put their kid in the car and they did it with their kids also. No verification, no check if what they were being told was the truth. The guy on TV, the guy behind the curtain told me to do it, I'm doing it. And that's the same people that believe that Trump is bad. And here's another lie. When it comes to my body, my choice. If Trump wins again and gets in office, your right to abortion is going to be threatened. That's a lie. The executive branch of the government, i.e. the president, has no say in abortion rights. The Supreme Court has ruled on this already, and the Supreme Court did not outlaw it. They only sent it back to the individual states, saying this was not a federal matter. This was not a matter that should gather federal protections. Each individual state has a right to make their own laws as it pertains to abortion. Abortion was not banished. Trump did not banish it. When the Supreme Court made the ruling, Trump wasn't in office. So how is Trump going to come back into office with everything bad that's going on in this country? Mortgage rates at 9%, 2 bags of groceries for $180, gas climbing back up again to $3.30, and he's going to make it his platform to stop abortion? And you believe this? This is the poison that comes from the mainstream media. Yes. Have lost the ability, Paul, to think for themselves, to reason for themselves, to do their own research. I'm going to put on CNN. I'm going to watch it. And whatever they tell me is exactly what's going on. Trump committed felonies. Letitia James. Trump, how about that? Trump's going to go to jail when he gets found guilty. Are you paying attention? It's a civil trial. Are you paying attention? They brought him up on real estate charges. There's no crime committed. You got
there's no victim. There's no victim. We were talking about before how CCRB will look in the cop's camera and self-generate a victim or a complainant. That's exactly what Letitia James did. She actually went to the banks and asked them to sign on. You know as well as I do, any court case, you have a defendant and you have the person suing. If it's a civil case, you have the one party suing and the person they're suing against. In the criminal case, you have the defendant and you have usually the state, especially in a drug deal, right? PSNY, we used to write that all the time. Here, Letitia James went to the banks and said, you've been defrauded, which is what the left loves to do. They love to tell people they're victims, even when they're not. And the bank said, no, we haven't. We got all our money. We competed for his business. This is great. And then those people on the banks testified on Trump's behalf. It didn't matter. You have this crooked judge. She ran on it, even though she said that she didn't. And she's right up there. Actually, I think she might be worse than Bragg, because Bragg is the DA of only one borough. People don't realize Bragg is a Manhattan DA. He has nothing to do with Queens or any of the other boroughs. James is the attorney general of the state.
Sure. She's the chief law enforcement officer of one of the largest states in the nation, New York State.
And she's going after Trump. I want to show you something because she says that she was not campaigning on going after Trump.
Sure.
And I want to prove to you, well, I'm sure you see this. This is, let's see if you can see this if I pull this up. This is what she said before she got elected.
The President of the United States has complained that I'm engaging in some sort of political witch hunt, that I've got some personal vendetta against him, that I campaigned against him. That is not true.
Will you sue him for us? Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the He's going to know my name personally.
I look forward to going into the office of Attorney General every day, suing him, defending your rights, and then going home. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. Donald Trump has got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. We've got to get ready to agitate and irritate until victory is won, but more importantly, until Trump is defeated. Lock him up. 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 And ultimately, we'll bring him down.
So that's her swearing.
Well, you have the attorney general. You have the attorney general who knows what she's saying is wrong. She's holding a bullhorn saying what? And the crowd says, lock him up. And she says, what? And the crowd says, lock him up. She knows that what she's engaged in, even if she pulls it off, is not a crime. He's not going to jail. So why are you whipping this crowd into some feverish belief that he's going to jail? Never once did she shut them down and say, whoa, 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 whoa. No, let me correct myself here. Should we convict him on what I'm going to bring him up on, there's no jail. No, lock him up. What? So these are the people that believe he's committed felonies. Why? Because the people they follow in the positions of power are telling them he's committed felonies. Paul, I'll tell you, and I've engaged in no crimes in my life. But when I go for a car loan, and I do the loan at the dealership, and, we go back and forth with the numbers, and we finally agree to a number, they say, oh, are you paying cash? Are you going to do a loan? I say, I'll do a loan. They give me the paperwork there. I estimate how much is my yearly salary. This, do you receive money anywhere else from rent or I got a house? Yeah, it's all a guess. I give that to the guy. He comes back. He says, okay, here's the keys. Here's your finance rate. And here's your payment due date. I haven't engaged in a crime. The only way I've engaged in a crime is if I don't pay that car. The only way I've engaged in a crime is if I've given information that's misleading to the point that I vanish. I'm not who I say I am, and I take the car. Trump never took anything. What are they saying? That he embellished the value of his portfolio? Everybody in the world, when they sell their house, hires a real estate agent. The real estate agent says, well, I've run comps in your neighborhood. Houses, the estimate is $840. I say we list it for $9 and see what happens. See what happens. And then you say, okay, great. Have you committed a crime because you've overvalued the estimates in the neighborhood? You've overvalued your property. What if somebody knocks on your door and says, I love your house, I'm taking it for $900? Have you committed a crime because everything came in at $840? No, you took a shot. You took a shot in the dark, and if nobody comes in for $9, then you adjust it. But this guy, like you said, they asked the banks. They told the banks they were defrauded. Banks said we weren't defrauded. This is like watching People's Court. Watching People's Court and seeing somebody suing and an empty bench or an empty table for the defendant because there's no crime committed, but you're going to watch that on TV. You're going to watch somebody try to sell you that they've been wronged, or not opposite. A defendant is there and he's telling you that, but there's an empty chair, because you need two parties. You need somebody who's done something wrong and somebody who's been wronged to have a case, whether it's civil or criminal. You need two parties. They didn't have the second party. This judge, and not only that, the fine, even if Trump was fined, the fine's illegal. It's in the Constitution. You cannot arbitrarily over fine somebody. It doesn't fit the crime. This is like giving somebody life in jail for jaywalking. The penalty doesn't fit the crime. If you go to jail, I mean, if you go to a court case because you didn't pay a parking meter, and you say, all right, I'm here to pay the $15 plus the $20 fine, and they say, nah, you're going to jail for 15 years, you can appeal that in 3 seconds. 3 seconds. You're going to take that to an appellate court. They're going to say, what's up? I got 15 years for not paying a parking summons. No, you didn't. Pay your $15. You're out of here. That's what's going to happen here. That's what's going to happen here. And it's just going to be another case where the liberals cry so hard because Trump's appeal is going to be successful. There has been so much time, effort, and energy throughout this country, many jurisdictions trying to nail this guy to the wall, We have the son of the president of the United States who lied on a gun application. He's been discharged from the Navy. You can't have a firearm on a discharge from the Navy that's not honorable. He lied. It's a felony. That in itself is 5 years. And they're giving him, they're playing this out. They're playing this out. People want to continue to believe that justice is blind and there's not 2 tiers of justice. There absolutely is 2 tiers of justice. And you don't have to support Trump and you don't have to hate Trump. You just have to be a reasonable thinker to watch what's going on here. Joe Biden wants to get on TV and say that he can't believe that Donald Trump took paperwork to his house in Mar-a-Lago. What type of person, Joe Biden says, what type of thought process does this guy have to do this?
When you saw the photograph of the top secret documents laid out on the floor at Mar-a-Lago, what did you think to yourself, looking at that image?
How that could possibly happen. How anyone could be that irresponsible.
Fox News alert, Joe Biden, the president of the United States, has allegedly mishandled classified documents, which we all know is the greatest crime anybody can commit. Merrick Garland has tapped the U.S. attorney in Chicago to investigate Joe Biden's mishandling of classified documents. According to the Department of Justice, Biden squirreled away 10 classified documents in a closet at a Biden think tank in Washington.
And it's just totally irresponsible.
Then you find out Biden's been doing it for 50 years since he's been in Senate. 50 years he's been taking papers. Well, guess what? People don't understand that when you're the president of the United States, you can declassify at that moment. Anything you want at any time. Vice presidents can't, senators can't. Nobody else in this country can declassify top secret information except the president. Trump can say, I declassified it all. That's it. It's a wrap. Game over. Game over. But we're watching Hunter Biden get a plea agreement for lying on a gun application.
Well, he's done way worse, bro.
Way worse. He married his dead brother's sister. Nobody has a problem with that. He married his dead brother's sister. That goes to the heart and soul of the person. I mean, we're not dealing with our society's best here. We're not.
Dude, he took a business deduction on his taxes for like $700,000 for hookers.
Yeah.
You and I would be prosecuted for that, bro.
I never heard the term. I keep receipts until Deion Sanders said it this year in the college football season. He said he keeps receipts. He keeps a copy of what people said in the past, and then he shows what people said in the past to show how different they act or how different their attitude is when you present them with the truth. So, Joe Biden wants to sit and condemn, and the videos are easy to find. They're everywhere. He wants to condemn the behavior of Donald Trump, holding on to these classified, and they're not, because Donald Trump is the president, can declassify any information he wants at any time, and that's a power that's held solely by the president of the United States. It's in the Constitution. The vice president, members of the Senate, members of the House of Representatives, they don't have that power. Joe Biden, when he squirreled away 50 years of documents in his house in Rehoboth Beach, in his think tank, Joe Biden was never the president of the United States. Any piece of paper that he had, that he took possession of and took to his residence, he didn't have the authority to do that. But it's so easy before he realizes that he's doing the same thing. Because, Paul, I got to be honest with you, I don't even know if he realizes that he's doing the same exact thing that he accuses Trump of being so deliberately wrong in doing. He's doing the same thing. And then, like you said, you present the video and there's the receipt. All of a sudden, the entire world sees the condemnation of Donald Trump by Joe Biden, only to have us witness a couple weeks later, Joe Biden's doing the same thing. But I shouldn't say he's doing the same thing. He's engaged in a behavior in what she's condemning Trump for doing, but Trump's allowed to do it. Joe Biden's not. He's not.
And you know what makes those documents worse is they found this out before the election. They sat on it until after the election of, the midterm election of 2022 and didn't reveal it till sometime when they appointed her in January, which is you can go through all of the different examples of how Biden was treated one way, Trump was treated another, and not just those two individuals, but their family, how Hunter Biden is treated. Look what he did with the subpoena. He defies the subpoena, shows up, holds a press conference, and then he crashes the hearing. Nothing happens, but Peter Navarro is arrested and sentenced. So is Steve Bannon. If, like you said, if you think there are two tiers of justice, you're just not paying attention. And you know what? It's one of the things we spoke about before was it's not just who's in the White House, but it's the local DA, the local sheriff, the local mayor, the governors. The corruption is so deep. And when you look at Bragg, Letitia, Fannie Willis, who's the other? Jack Smith, the prosecutor. If you look at the affidavits and the stuff that's presented from her prosecuting Biden and Jack Smith going after Trump, you would think like Trump committed murder. And a lot of people, like you were saying, a lot of people in New York think like, yeah, lock him up for a civil issue. I want to play you Letitia James. I want to show you her reaction after they gave him the corporate death sentence, $450 million. Let me see if I can pull this up.
Donald Trump engaged in deceptive business practices and tremendous fraud. Donald Trump falsely, knowingly inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself, his family, and to cheat the system. Donald Trump may have authored the art of the deal, but he perfected the art of the steal. This long-running fraud was intentional, egregious, illegal, and he did all of this with the help of the other defendants, his two adult sons and senior executives at the Trump Organization. And so, after 11 weeks of trial, we showed the staggering extent of his fraud and exactly how Donald Trump and the other defendants deceived banks, insurance companies, and other financial institutions for their own personal gain. We proved just how much Donald Trump, his family, and his company unjustly benefited from his fraud.
That's a press conference of a cult leader. That's the press conference of somebody so deranged that they're making their minions believe that they've put in jail the largest drug trafficker in the history of the world. That's a toxic press conference. It's full of anger. It's the furthest thing, I believe, from professionalism. But then again, from the beginning, before Letitia James was elected Attorney General for New York State, Sadly, she ran on a campaign on a platform of going to get Trump. Could you imagine in the state of New York, with the amount of crime that this state sees, the city of New York, the amount of crime that the city of New York sees, that people actually got behind Letitia James and her platform of I'm going to get Trump? That was their concern. She didn't get him. Now her minions and the cult that she delivered to, they think that Trump has been gotten. But we all know, the people that pay attention know, that the trial didn't have a jury. It had a very jaded and partisan judge. Everybody knew from the beginning that he did not stand a chance, not a snowball's chance in hell, of coming out of this trial. It wasn't a trial, it was a kangaroo court. He had no chance of coming out of this trial unscathed. The writing was on the wall from day one. This is a fix. The fix is in. And I believe that when he appeals, and of course the appeal has to go to the New York State Court of Appeals because this case is in New York State, and I don't put anything past the judicial system of New York State. I don't put anything past their inability to really see the facts and judge a person. Justice is blindly judge a person. I hope that the Court of Appeals in New York State is going to see the lunacy of this and overturn it. But the fact of the matter is that he has to pony up $450 million right now within the next 30 days to even file his appeal.
Right.
He has to pony up $450 million cash that's going to be held in escrow before he can even file his appeal. So, yeah, listen, Trump can act like there's not a lot of damage done to him. Trump can act like, there's no chink in the armor, but that's tough. That's difficult. I don't care who anybody is. I hope he's able to pony up the $450 million, and I hope he's able to move this forward on the appeal.
Well, she said that if he doesn't have the cash, I think he has 30 days, that she's going to force him to sell something.
Correct.
To get the cash, just to keep it in escrow while the appeal goes through. And she said she actually, whether or not you like Trump, this should really scare everyone. But she actually says she's eyeing 40 Wall Street. If that's not a communist, if that's not a dictator, if that doesn't scare people, and the media, of course, supports her, they think it's great, and they're just giddy over this reaction. I want to play you the clip from MSNBC. Listen to their reaction and how excited they are about communism coming to America. Let me get this clip started.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Hi, everyone. It is 5 o'clock here in New York. I'm Alicia Menendez in for Nicole Wallace. And that was New York Attorney General Letitia James putting the disgraced, twice impeached, 4 times indicted ex-president on notice that his pride and joy, his real estate empire, is fair game. Telling ABC News that she will seize those assets if Trump fails to pony up the massive amount of money he must now fork over in the wake of Judge Engoron's decision in the civil fraud trial here in New York. A decision the New York Times described as a, quote, crushing defeat that could cost him all his available cash, a total that, when all is said and done, could exceed $450 million. New York AG Tish James is now saying in no uncertain terms that if Trump cannot pay up, she will not hesitate to move in on Trump's assets. She will seize the buildings that bear his name, and hinting that she's already thinking about where to start.
We are prepared to make sure that the judgment is paid to New Yorkers. And yes, I look at 40 Wall Street each and every day.
She looks at 40 Wall Street, quote, each and every day. Now, imagine you are Donald Trump. You are staring down this massive bill that is coming due. The reality of that warning from New York AG Tish James is sinking in. And you know that if you can't pay up, she's coming for your precious buildings. If you were Donald Trump, you might, understandably, for lack of a better term, be sweating it.
So what do you think about that? Doesn't that make you angry? Just looking at her face, how excited. I don't even know who that girl was, but she was just thrilled about this.
I'm not even sure she has any idea about what opinions or what knowledge she has on her own about the the case or the situation at hand. She's put in front of a television screen. The prompter's behind the camera, and she just reads from it. So giddy and so happy. No idea at all about the protections the Constitution provides for American citizens. It's all thrown out the window, and Trump behaved in a way that defrauded banks and insurance companies, Letitia James says. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. They can't name a single, because there is none. They can't name a single bank. They can't name a single institution, a single insurance company that was defrauded, because it didn't happen. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was hurt at all. The bottom line fact of the matter is that if you take out a loan and you don't pay the loan, then everybody in the world knows your collateral is open to be seized. Everybody in the world knows that at 4 o'clock in the morning, some tow truck's going to come and it's going to take your boat or your car or your motorcycle or whatever it is that you didn't pay for or that you defrauded the bank. She wants people to believe that he engaged in that behavior. And now she's going to roll up that tow truck at 4 o'clock in the morning to 40 Wall Street. She wants everybody to see the building. She wants everybody to see the size of the property. She's going to tow that away because that's the collateral that Donald Trump wasn't able to pay for. And it's a lie. He paid off every loan. This is, I used to feel bad for the people that went to MSNBC and CNN for their news because I knew that they were brainwashed. But now I don't feel bad for them anymore because now I know they do it on purpose. Now I know they've made a choice not to distance themselves or take them away from that propaganda machine. You know, I'm a history buff, Paul, and I ask this to people all the time. You know, I say after in Germany in the mid-30s all the way to the end of World War II, and Hitler was the most powerful person. He was the chancellor of Germany. I ask people, I say, who do you think the second in charge, the second most powerful person in Germany was? And they'll think of some, you know, I don't know. They'll think of a German, a general. They think in military terms. Well, if Hitler has such a strong military and he presents himself as a military officer in his uniform, no, it was Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, the minister of propaganda. And Germany knew in the mid-30s that they had to whip their countrymen into a feverish belief that the world was against Germany and Germany was in the right. And they knew the importance of having that propaganda and getting it out there, controlling the message that nobody presented harm or issue to Germany. When Germany rolled into Poland, all the Germans believed that Poland was going to roll into Germany. You see, we cut Poland off before they came to us. And that's how they got the fighting machine. And that's how they got the people to get behind what it is that Germany wanted to do. The same thing's happening now, Paul. History is repeating itself.
I know. Joseph Goebbels, yeah, he made 2 films. One was called The Eternal Jew. And in that film, Jews were portrayed as evil, subhuman, and didn't deserve the right to live, to exist.
Sure.
And I put out a video comparing a lot of the similarities. I always say Nazi Germany did not start with the cattle cars. It started with the demonization of one particular group of people, and nobody really spoke out about it. If you look at the similarities of what Joseph Goebbels was saying and how it wasn't just accepted, it was embraced, you're doing the same thing today about another particular race, and we're not allowed to mention it. I don't know if you saw the new trailer. I don't even know if the movie's out yet. The American Society of Magical Negroes. I put it on my channel. It was, they say, as a joke, what is the most dangerous animal on the planet? While he's standing in front of a poster of a great white shark. And he says, I don't know, a shark? And he said, no, white people.
I know you can feel their discomfort, Aaron. Watching you walk through a room full of white people was the most painful thing I've ever seen.
Excuse me. Sorry.
I don't want to take you to a job interview. There's a recruiting class starting right now, and we got to get you in it.
Welcome to the American Society of Magical Negroes.
I don't really understand.
It's easier to say. What's the most dangerous animal on the planet?
Shark.
White people, when they feel uncomfortable. White people feeling uncomfortable precedes a lot of bad stuff for us. That's why we fight white discomfort every day. Because the happier they are, the safer we are.
And that's supposed to be humor, and nobody's supposed to complain about it. In Germany, you had signs that say, you know, Jews can't swim in our pools. Jews not wanted, Jews not welcome. Well, what did Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston, just do? Here's a party. Whites are not welcome. Whites are not allowed. You have Lori Lightfoot saying that she will no longer give interviews when she was mayor to people who are white.
Now, this is just a stunning story. Democratic Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, she's catching heat for apparently deciding to only grant interviews to black or brown journalists. Several local Chicago reporters are raising the issue, and now Mayor Lightfoot herself is stating in a series of tweets, quote, "It's a shame that in 2021, the City Hall press corps is overwhelmingly white in a city where more than half of the city identifies as black, Latino, AAPI, or Native American. Diversity and inclusion is imperative across all institutions, including media. In order to progress, we must change. This is exactly why I'm being intentional about prioritizing media requests."
You have Bank of America requiring down payments only from white people. You don't need it if you're a minority. You have the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, given out on a point system. People who are obese or have COPD or other health issues are moved up the ladder. But if you're white, they deduct points.
Never in American history, modern history in any case, has the federal government made it official policy to withhold life-saving medical treatment from Americans on the basis of their skin color. But that's exactly what the CDC did. Those most likely to die of COVID had to wait weeks until their vaccines were approved. How many of them died in the meantime as they waited? No one kept track of those numbers because nobody seemed to care. And because nobody cared, the trend continued. Race had become a deciding factor in the distribution of critical health care in this country. Several states made it explicit. Whites would go last in the COVID vaccine queue, regardless of need. The state of Vermont did this, so did the state of Montana. The FDA provided guidance for physicians in all 50 states, telling them how to determine which patient should get this treatment, this critical treatment. Physicians, the FDA explained, should consider, quote, race and ethnicity as they administer treatments. And so physicians are doing that across the country. In Utah, COVID patients are triaged by a scoring system that determines whether or not they qualify for these potentially life-saving antibody treatments. Look at this chart. It shows the scoring system. You'll notice that race often counts more than physical health. The state of Utah, for example, gives 2 points to anyone simply for not being white. You win if you're not white. If you have congestive heart failure at the same time, you get 1 point. So if you're a white congestive heart failure patient, that's not enough for you. It's the same story in Minnesota. Minnesota awards 2 points to so-called BIPOC patients. That means anyone who's not white. If you have high blood pressure and you're 60 years old, you get 1 point. So tough luck for you. Imagine if that was one of your parents. It is one of someone's parents. In New York, writes Aaron Sabarium in a shocking new piece for the Washington Free Beacon, quote, racial minorities are automatically eligible for scarce COVID-19 therapeutics regardless of age or underlying conditions. It doesn't matter what kind of health they're in. All that matters is their skin color. Whites don't qualify. This is not health care. It's punishment. It's punishment meted out on the basis of skin color. Now, the justification for all of this, and the authorities could not be clearer about it. They've taken their ideas directly from America's colleges. They'll tell you why they're doing this. The justification is history. The United States has mistreated racial minorities in centuries past, they say. Therefore, whites must suffer now. So your ancestors did bad things, or people who looked like your ancestors did bad things. So now we're withholding medicine from you. They call this equity. It's not equity. It is collective punishment. It's the North Korean standard. It's the definition of evil. And in case you're wondering that's actually what it is, consider this. A young Haitian man could cross our border illegally today. Many have. That person could show up at a clinic in New York tomorrow for COVID treatment and get preference over an elderly American citizen purely because of his appearance. Think about that. The Haitian has not suffered from systemic racism in America, whatever that is. He just got here, but he goes to the front of the line anyway. Now, that's not a criticism of the Haitian. It's not his fault. He didn't make the rules. But the Americans who did make the rules clearly didn't make them on the basis of public health. They made them in an effort to hurt a specific group of Americans, and they're succeeding. This is happening everywhere, even in places you would never expect it to happen. Watch as this man talks to an employee at a Texas medical facility to find out exactly what their policies are.
So I'm not gonna be able to get it today because I don't qualify. Yeah. What if I like smoke and vape? I heard that was negative. No. Okay. But if I were black and Hispanic, then I'd be able to qualify. Okay. So I'm being denied medical service because of my race. Is that?
That's the criteria.
So you can't get life-saving drugs from the government of Texas if you're the wrong color.
Farm aid. Biden is very proud of giving out farm aid based on color. Hurricane relief. White people, you heard Kamala Harris say it. Even though your house is destroyed and someone else's house is destroyed and you live on the same block, we're not going to give you the same amount of money because we're all assuming that you started from the same point. So even hurricane relief was given out based on race.
Kamala Harris picking the wrong time to go woke after Hurricane Ian wreaked havoc on Florida. The monster storm destroying entire cities, causing tens of billions of dollars in damage. Dozens are dead and more than 500,000 Americans are still without power. But somehow the VP is using this tragedy to push her radical ideology.
It is our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted by these extreme conditions. We have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. And if we want people to be in an equal place, sometimes we have to take into account those disparities.
This is the extreme portion of the Democratic Party, the socialist portion of the Democratic Party. You know, the Democrats, you know, they want to be everybody's hero. Somebody, you should, and I recommend everybody pull up a video from 1968, Malcolm X. Malcolm X is being interviewed, and he compares the white Democrat. Yes. He calls the white Democrat the biggest, the single biggest problem, the single biggest enemy to the black community, because the white Democrat wants to keep the black community down, yet promise them that they're the black community's only hope, that we're here to help you. And Malcolm X in 1968 called it out and said that that was coming to an end, that people were starting to pay attention, that the real wolf in the hen house was the white Democrat, the white liberal.
That white person that you see calling himself a liberal is the most dangerous thing in the entire Western Hemisphere. He's the most deceitful. He's like a fox. And a fox is always more dangerous in the forest than the wolf. You can see the wolf coming. You know what he's up to. But the fox will fool you. He comes at you with his mouth shaped in such a way that even though you see his teeth, you think he's smiling. And you take him for a friend.
There are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. The wolf doesn't act friendly. And therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate.
I'd like to point out, though, that...
I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, who usually poses as the friend of the Negro.
You know, everybody considers Adolf Hitler the worst person in the history of the world. The worst person in the history of the world. Hung a flag, the Nazi party. The Z in Nazi stands for socialist. The Nazi Socialist Party. Socialist views. The Democratic Party today, the AOCs, and the Joe Bidens, and the Kamala Harrises.
Bernie Sanders.
And he's an open socialist.
Yeah.
They want to run and make you run away from the ideas and the ideals of the Nazi party in the 30s. But here they are, they're persecuting and they're prosecuting their political rivals. They are absolutely putting people in jail. They are rounding them up. They're putting handcuffs and cuffs around their ankles, and they're locking these people up at airports. They're doing it publicly. They're putting fear into the American public, the same fear that existed in Europe in the mid-30s, that if you speak out against somebody, if you speak out against something, you'll be rounded up in the middle of the night and you'll never be seen again. If people can't see now that there is, and we spoke about it before, a two-tiered justice system for the Democratic Socialists, the Joe Biden clan, and everybody else. Because if you're not them, then you're a MAGA. Even if you're not a MAGA, you're a MAGA. You can't be an African American in this country and be a conservative and not be hated by the Socialist Party. Take a look at Clarence Thomas, the amount of abuse that man puts up with. But the Democratic Party wants to hang their hat on furthering. They want to give props to members of the African American community who are highly educated and make great strides for the American for the American way of life. Well, Clarence Thomas is that person. He's hated. Larry Elby, you spoke about him, hated. Caitlyn Jenner, right? The Democratic Party wants to hang their hat on protecting transgender rights. They hate Caitlyn Jenner.
That's what I'm saying.
They don't want to protect anybody's rights, Paul. They want to hate everybody that doesn't agree with their anti-American way of life.
That's why I've come to the realization now that for years I thought that it was always based on race, that blacks could do certain things or say certain things that whites can't. And that's, you saw it with the 2020 riots. But it's not really about race. It's about party. You mentioned Clarence Thomas. Alan West is another one who was attacked. You have Ben Carson. Like, you have all of these great leaders in the black community, but because they vote or they are Republican, it's fair game. You could say or do anything. So the people who claim to care about marginalizing minorities really don't care. They throw that philosophy or that theory out the window once you put an R next to your name. And it just shows again, like everything else, that they're so full of shit.
They're frauds. They're frauds. And anybody who can't see through the fact that they're frauds, then you get what you deserve. You know, listen, I don't live in New York City. I never did. I was a cop in New York City, in the borough of Manhattan, and I was a cop in the borough, a firefighter and a cop in the borough of Manhattan. I'm a Long Island guy, Paul. I would love to get on the train and go to Manhattan during Christmas time and watch the Christmas tree lighting. And catch a meal at Del Frisco's. It's what I used to do every December. I do a boys' night out. I'd make my way into Manhattan 3 or 4 times a year. Not a ton of times, but yeah, I had no problem going. You won't catch me in Manhattan in a million years. Just today, just this morning, 40-year-old man shot on the subway at 182nd Street in Manhattan. Subway. I'll tell you right now, I don't know whether you're bold or whether you're stupid to ride the subway right now in 2024, because that is a literal underground jungle. The entire city of New York and their liberal policies and their liberal way of life have gotten completely out of hand, and now everybody's in the crosshairs. There's nobody who's safe anymore. Even if you try to hide out, we used to talk about that as cops in Harlem, right? The people that didn't want to be on the street, the people that had to hide in their apartments because what was going on outside their apartments was dangerous. You could catch a stray bullet. You could get run over standing and waiting for a bus. Well, now the people inside their houses, they're not even safe because all of these illegals are taking their e-bikes and they're putting them in the hallways and they're putting them in their apartments and they're burning. And we spoke about this earlier. They're burning these tenements, these 6-story H-types down to the ground throughout the city every day. People are dying in these fires.
Tonight, at least 4 people are dead after a Manhattan e-bike repair shop went up in flames. The charred bikes piled on the sidewalk. The inferno erupted just after midnight in the ground-level repair shop and spread to the upper floors of apartments. More than 100 firefighters rushed to the scene. At least 5 people were injured, including a firefighter and an EMT. So far this year, the New York City Fire Department says there have already been 108 fires linked to lithium-ion batteries and 13 deaths. This surveillance video from February shows just how quickly those fires can spread. So does this demonstration, where a lithium-ion battery fails and explodes. It can often happen because of faulty design or overcharging. Here's another harrowing video of a battery fire breaking out right next to a child who barely escapes.
There's nowhere to go anymore that's safe. You're not safe in your bed, and you're not safe walking the street. When does it end? It never ends, Paul, until people realize that as long as you continue to vote Democratic, as long as you continue to vote liberal, you're always going to get the same thing. It's the sheer definition of lunacy, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result.
You were saying that you never thought, and we were both wrong, we never thought that the 2-8 would come back, that Harlem, or that particular area of Harlem where we worked, was so far gone and so overrun by drugs. And now it's beautiful. I'm not saying there's no crime, but it really is beautiful. Do you think we're also making a mistake when we say New York City can never make a comeback? Do you think that maybe it can, just like, why? What's the difference between the 2-8 and the city in general?
The difference is that, you have to have a dog in the fight to care about the fight, Paul. Harlem was always occupied by American citizens. Always. It was always I consider it now, with knowing the history, and a lot more history that I know about Harlem now than I did when I was a cop there, the importance of 125th Street in the African American culture within this country, the importance of a place like Sylvia's and the Apollo Theater, and almost, to be honest with you, the mecca of African Americanism in the United States of America. And people in that community started to understand that that's where they lived. That's where they were born. That's where they were raised. That's where they were going to die. And they were probably best served to get involved in making it better. The people that are in the city of New York right now, by the hundreds of thousands, they're not from this country. They don't have our experiences. They don't have our care and our love for the American way of life. They don't care about law enforcement. Where they lived, where they came from, they're third world countries, Paul. They're third world countries. They're places where cops pull people over to take money from them, where cops are engaged in homicides and drug trade themselves. You can't take that ideology out of these people. And the overwhelming majority of the crime committed in the city of New York now is committed by these illegals. They're not immigrants. They're not asylum seekers. They're illegals. And there's so many of them now that they're never going to get them back. So whatever blight, whatever issues, and they're big and they're bad, the issues that are going on right now, they're not going to get smaller. The only way to get control of this is to start it completely over, to go back to a point that 400,000 of these immigrants, these illegals, were not in the city of New York. How are you ever going to capture them back again? How are you ever going to get them out of this country? Because we all know the liberal, Paul, is going to fight tooth and nail. All of a sudden, the liberal's going to become the constitutionalist. And they're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that the United States of America does not send these people back to their country. And unfortunately, and I do say it's unfortunate because I don't believe in it. Unfortunately, there's courts in this country that handle immigration courts. And Donald Trump, if this is what he wants to do, if he gets elected again, he's going to have to go through the courts. And the courts are not going to allow for mass deportations.
No. And You know, there was a time, the Democrat Party has changed so much. We were talking about Tulsi Gabbard and whether or not Trump would pick her. She had a line like Reagan did, which is, I didn't leave the Democrat Party left me. And it's changed so much. There was a time when the Democrats were normal and actually cared about our border. You see them in several videos. That you got Schumer, Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Clinton during the State of the Union address saying that it is wrong and ultimately self-defeating to allow these people to come here and take our jobs. He said they strain our welfare system and our healthcare system and our schools. Those were normal Democrats. They would be considered today, they'd be considered far right, right wing.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country.
We are a generous and welcoming people here in the United States, but those who enter the country illegally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law, and they are showing disregard for those who are following the law.
Illegal immigration is wrong, plain and simple.
The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more, by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens.
What do I think about the control of our borders? What would I do about it? Ladies and gentlemen, no great country can say it is secure without being able to control its borders, period.
We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to become immigrants in this country.
We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws.
People who enter the United States without our permission are illegal aliens, and illegal aliens should not be treated the same as people who entered the U.S. legally.
Ultimately, our nation, like all nations, has the right and obligation to control its borders and set laws for residency and citizenship.
It is wrong and ultimately self-defeating for a nation of immigrants to permit the kind of abuse of our immigration laws we have seen in recent years, and we must do more to stop it.
I have a theory that the whole reason why they're allowing these people to come in is to replace whites, that they've given up on the middle class. They know we're not going to vote for them to keep them in power, so they're importing a whole new voter base. I still believe that, but I also think they're scared that a lot of the blacks are going over to Trump. So when they're importing all of these people from Central America, it might not be just to replace the white vote. They're losing the black vote as well, and that's got them terrified. Trump is set to get more of a black vote than any other Republican. It's still nowhere near where the Democrats are, but in those cities, in Chicago, they're revolting. They're waking up and realizing, you know what? You're not the flavor of the week anymore.
Democratic Party, we're watching you.
Yeah.
We are disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
We are angry.
Yes.
We are offended.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel like we're being mistreated, misused, and disrespected.
Deep emotional wounds coming to the surface.
As Black people who have been hurt continuously by the city and country it loves, it ain't our responsibility to take care of everybody else.
And anger.
We don't want to have to recall anybody. We don't want to have to protest anybody, but we are not going to be ignored, Brandon. Mayor Johnson.
Many in Chicago's black community and the city council speaking out against spending $51 million to house migrants, asking when will the help for them finally become a reality.
For any independent
Democratic Party. Brandon Johnson, Governor Pritzker, and President Biden have showed us what they think about the black community all over this country. And so we're standing here today to say, okay, if that's what it is, we with it. We don't have to support the Democratic Party. Right.
Within seconds of city officials taking the microphone, community members anxious to speak their minds took center stage.
Turn the buses around. Turn the buses around.
You want to take the little scrap, the resources that we have, and put us at the bottom of the barrel? That's not fair.
I heard someone say earlier that here in Chicago, we're talking about turning away from the Democratic Party. I have already turned. I will be voting Republican this time around. And I don't think that that's just a sentiment of Carter Trust. I think that's the sentiment of a lot of people around the entire United States.
First, it was Black Lives Matter. Then you have trans lives matter. Now it's illegals matter. And Americans are kicked to the curb as usual. Well, guess what? When you kick Americans to the curb, that affects all races. And a lot of them finally are speaking out. And I think they're worried that Trump is going to get a larger portion of that vote. And if he does, the Democrats will be done for a long time.
Yes, this invasion was an absolute replacement of the black vote. I don't think so much the white vote in America. The Democratic Party could always rely on the black vote throughout the country, and they lost that. They were starting to lose that, and that started to erode probably back in Trump's first election, and he was certainly building. He was building on that. We all know that black employment was the highest in this country when he was president, and I think the black communities know that also. And it was the black communities that were the targets for the riots. You want to hang a Black Lives Matter flag. The organization's a cult. I don't care. I'll say it. But, you have the right. You have the constitutional right to go out and peacefully protest. You don't have the right to go into people's neighborhoods and burn down businesses. And a lot of these black communities in the United States of America were the ones that were affected the most. Yeah. And that, I think, was a turning point where they started to realize and recognize that the police were kept out. They were told, who was it, Mosley, the mayor of Baltimore, who's also indicted right now, who's going to jail.
Yeah, the DA.
No, there was the black female mayor of Baltimore.
Yeah. Well, she said we're going to give them room to destroy.
I worked with the police and instructed them to do everything that they could to make sure that the protesters were able to exercise their right to free speech. It's a very delicate balancing act because while we tried to make sure that they were protected from the cars and the other things that were going on, we also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well.
I wanted them to get their frustrations out, so I told them to give them room to riot. What? What are we doing here?
Her exact words were, and I have it on one of my videos, I think it was room to destroy. But what's worse is she went on TV after that and said, I never said that. She denied it. I never said that.
Well, like I said, now we can keep receipts.
Yeah.
It's so easy to find.
Do you think Trump's going to win?
I don't know. I'll ask you a question. Did he win in 2020?
I'm already banned on YouTube, so it doesn't really matter what I say anymore. I made 2 videos of it and I got censored, just showing the math from a statistical point of view. It was shocking what they expected us to believe. What bothers me more than that, believe it or not, is that you're not allowed to even discuss it.
Well, I'll discuss it. I'll discuss
it.
Trump won in 2020.
But I'm not
because when I went to bed at 12 o'clock at night, Trump was the winner.
But what I'm saying, yes, I agree 100%. Like I said, I made 2 videos proving it.
Voting in this country has turned into a fraudulent sport now. I don't care what anybody says. Paper ballots and ID. That's it. That's the American way. That's what we do. I have no problem catching up with technology. But when technology is Dominion machines that are made in China, that can be hacked, that can be overridden, and we all know they were. I don't care what anybody says. We all know that the Dominion machines were new machines. They were made in China. They came out specifically for this election. COVID was released specifically for the election. I don't care what anybody says. Joe Biden now, nobody can go out. Nobody can campaign. He has to be in his basement. He has to do no interviews. I've never seen, Paul, in the history of the United States of America, I've never seen a president get elected without an interview. You know, people said the first televised debate in the history of the United States of America was JFK Jr. against Richard Nixon. Everything before that debate was radio only. People have said to this day, if television didn't exist for that particular debate, Richard Nixon would have been elected president of the United States. If people only heard the two, but when they saw JFK, when they saw the way he looked, when they saw something younger than they'd ever seen before, and obviously a well put together, attractive male, that put him over the edge. That's the importance still to this day of getting yourself on the television. That's the importance still to this day of getting out there and meeting people. Joe Biden didn't do it. How are you going to tell me he won? How? All of a sudden, culture has changed in America 180 degrees, where we don't need to see or hear from the people running for the highest elected office in the nation. We don't need to hear their ideas, their ideals. We're just going to elect them blindly, and people are going to believe that that really happened. Trump's out there meeting 65, 70,000 people at a rally. Those are 65, 70,000 people in every town that he went to, that if they're going to stand in the rain and the snow to attend a rally, they're going to do the same to vote for him.
So not only are they saying that Biden won, but he got 81 million votes,
Sure,
right?
the most votes ever.
Yeah, I know.
Where are they, Paul? I don't run into anybody. I'm telling you right now, and I'm not even lying. I don't run into anybody. I haven't run into anybody in the past 3 years that looked me in the face and said, I voted for Biden. Whether they say I'm going to do it again or I'm not going to do it again. And I would expect that I would run into people that would say, hey, listen, I did it the first time. I'm not going to do it the second. I've never run into a single person who told me they voted for him.
Yeah. Well, you used to see a lot of Obama Biden bumper stickers.
Sure, you still do. They're on the same piece of shit 1984 Toyota Celica that's still driving up and down the Long Island Expressway. These people are still hoping for hope and change. That ain't coming.
But I'm saying you were proud to vote for Obama. I don't think there's a lot of people that voted for Biden that would come out and even be proud. I mean, there's the fringe that are insane, that have TDS, that are proud.
81 million, Paul.
Well, I agree with you 100%. What I was saying before is the bigger threat, and we've spoken about this at length, is you're not allowed to say certain things. You're not allowed to question the election. You're not allowed to question the vax. You're not allowed to. There is no more freedom of speech. It is the First Amendment, and it's whether or not you like what I'm saying doesn't mean that I should forfeit the right to say it. It is meant and designed and passed to support speech that people don't like, because if you liked what I was saying, there would be no objection to it.
Sure.
And that threat, like you were saying, where you worry about a knock on the door, where you're now put under the microscope, where you can, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. When Letitia James was talking about lock him up, when we played that video, she wasn't, and you were saying that it wasn't even a crime. There's a possibility, I don't know when that footage is from, but there's a possibility that she didn't even know about that she was just going to find something and hope it was a crime. And one of the things that I've learned, and I think has now been proven to the world, and the liberals are going to go nuts when they hear me say this, all of these investigations prove one thing: Trump is squeaky clean. If they had anything on him, they certainly would have proven it by now.
He'd be in jail. He'd be in
Russia?
jail. So let's get back to your original question. Does Trump win the 2024 election? Well, voting and voting irregularities were the cause of the 2020 election. Democrats, they're not stupid people. They're dumb, but they're not stupid. They know they can't steal an election through the voting process this time around because people aren't going to stand for it. So what are they doing is they're looking to just have him removed from the ballot entirely. Like this wacko from Colorado, this wacko, this
Shanna Bellows.
This unelected. She's not even elected to a position. She's appointed.
Wait, are you talking about Maine or Colorado?
Oh, Maine. I'm sorry, Maine.
Yeah, Shanna Bellows in Maine. Colorado was the Supreme Court.
Yeah, okay, yes, Maine, to remove him from the ballot because he's an insurrectionist. So this is what goes on. This is the liberal way of thinking now. We can't steal the election the second time around. We're kind of surprised that this guy stuck around. But now that he's here, we have to deal with him a second time.
What I try to tell people that aren't really, they like Trump, but they're not like you and I. They're not as informed. Whether or not you like Trump is so besides the issue, because you should be outraged as an American. They're telling you, I don't know how many votes he got in Colorado. Let's say 1.5 million votes, whatever it was, 2 million. They told 2 million people, Americans, that when you go to vote on election day, the candidate that you want to vote for is removed. That's an attack on you as an American. It's not just about Trump. They're doing this to the American society.
That's the attack on democracy that the Democratic Liberal Party is running to save. They say that if you don't vote for us, then democracy is at stake. But everything that they're engaged in and everything that they're doing is completely anti-democracy. Absolutely. In the United States of America, we don't jail our political opponents. In the United States of America, we don't take our political opponents off ballots. We don't take the will of half the country and just discard it and tell half the country that you don't have a voice, that whomever it is that you're looking to vote for, we don't like him, so we've removed him. You don't have any other options. That's not democracy. So don't tell me that voting for a Democrat is a vote for the saving of democracy, because it's a lie. It's a lie for the people that don't pay attention. Just like, what we said earlier, Trump's gonna stop abortion. That's the threat of democracy. Or Trump's not going to leave office in 4 years. That's the threat of democracy. That these people are putting out there. They're lies. Trump is leaving if he wins in 4 years. Trump never told anybody to go to that Capitol building and riot. He used the word peacefully.
Exactly. But you know what, dude? It's ignored. When you have all of this footage come out, they pick and choose what they want to listen to. When Biden was found to brag that he was withholding $1 billion from Ukraine unless they fire the prosecutor going after his son, that should have been bigger than Watergate. That should have been on every paper, every lead story. It should have been shown so much that you would have been sick of it. It was ignored. And when Trump says we are going to protest peacefully and patriotically, that's ignored too. You have the wonderful world of film, footage, evidence, surveillance, whatever you want to call it. And it sheds light on a lot of issues. They don't want to talk about it. They want to ignore it. It's just not covered. When you look at all the
that the Biden family has engaged in, Paul, is bigger than Watergate. And in the grand scheme of things, Watergate was an incident that at the time was so serious that a president stepped away from office. Now, in the grand scheme of things, because the president sent a couple guys into a room to rifle through some papers.
Yeah, I know.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine what we're dealing with now? And
but back then we had an honest media. Back then, the press, the whole reason for freedom of the press is to hold government accountable. Now you don't have that. You have people picking sides, and 90% of the media is pro Biden. Not just pro Biden, but they hate Trump. So honesty goes out the window. You don't know who to trust.
They're not writing the news. They're making the news. They're not reporting the news. They're writing the news.
Yeah.
You know, how often now do you read a story about Trump or some Republican? Anonymous source. Anonymous source isn't a person. It's a made-up story by the leftist media. Anonymous source. No, if you have something to say about somebody, there used to be a time that your witness had to be named. There used to be a time that somebody giving you that information had to be named. Now it's an anonymous source. It's not a real
time. All the time, yeah. And they run with it.
But anyway.
They run with it. You want to go over the Her report? Talk about Joe?
Sure. That's the Her report is right now the biggest thing, in my opinion, that justice is not blind, and there is a two-tier justice system. Her was appointed by Merrick Garland. That's Joe Biden's boy. And not only is that Joe Biden's boy, that's Joe Biden's gatekeeper. So
you talk about corrupt, bro. He might be more corrupt than Letitia James. Letitia James is possessed. Garland, case after case, when they were investigating Hunter Biden, and they went to Merrick Garland and said, listen, I don't have jurisdiction in the state of, I think it was California. Can you have them work with us on this tax case? No, I don't have jurisdiction here. The two IRS whistleblowers said, we have information that implicates President Biden. Merrick Garland told them, you are not to be investigating President Biden. It has to stop with Joe. And then with Hunter. And then they slow walk the whole thing just long enough, taking enough time so that the statute of limitations runs out. I can't think of anyone who's more corrupt than that. Sending a SWAT team to get the documents at President Trump's house, but when it comes to Biden's documents, it's okay, Joe, you send them to us when you're ready. They sent 2 attorneys to go look at it. They were way less secure than the Trump documents because Trump has Secret Service.
It's the recyclable corruption clan. Obama put him up for Supreme Court justice, and now, thank God, he never got on there. Thank God somebody had enough wherewithal to realize this guy was a catastrophe, and they didn't make it happen. But, he sits idle for a couple of years. You don't hear from him. Sleepy Joe gets in office, and what does he do? He recycles them, appoints some attorney general.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the signs that show that Biden's not really running the show. Obama is. Send this guy back into circulation. But anyway, he makes all of these bold press conferences about going after Trump. Another one going after Trump. I think we have to understand the gravity of how bad the Biden documents were, that it actually forced Merrick Garland, a person who, to me, appears to be afraid of his own shadow, at his press conferences.
Oh, my God. He shakes. He trembles. His voice is cracking.
He's a nebbish because he realizes, I think there's a part of him that realizes that he is absolutely protecting corruption. I think there's a part of him that realizes he cannot believe he's out in front of that microphone saying the things that he's saying. But nevertheless, push came to shove. The Biden documents at the House in Delaware were bad. So what does he do? He appoints a special counsel from Chicago. Chicago's the epicenter of democratic policies in this country. But anyway, the report gets compiled, it gets released. And Joe Biden wants to hide behind a portion of the report that he approves of. He gets on TV. He says, the report shows what I've been saying from the beginning. The things that I did that were different than what Trump did was I was cooperative from the beginning. Trump wasn't. They told me I had these files. I said, yep, do your investigation. The level of cooperation doesn't gauge the level of the crime. But Joe Biden wants the non-informed Democratic minions to believe that he cooperated, so he deserves a pass. Nevertheless, he stands on TV after the report is released and says, the report confirms what we've been saying, what I've been saying the whole time. I did nothing wrong. That's not what the report said.
No, page
the
one.
The report said he did do everything wrong. It's just that his mental capacity and physical capacity would bring a jury to have compassion for an old man.
And where have you heard that evidence suggests the person violated the law?
Hillary Clinton.
Thank you.
Although there is evidence of potential violations of the statutes regarding the handling of classified information, our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. As a result, although the Department of Justice makes final decisions on matters like this, we are expressing to Justice our view that no charges are appropriate in this case.
No reasonable prosecutor would bring such a charge.
Yeah.
And this guy, says, I don't think that we could find a jury that would, Biden would present himself as an old man of limited cognitive ability with a bad memory, or however he worded it. That is not the prosecutor's job. If they honestly had something on Trump and they were going to bring charges, but the county was full of Trump supporters, and he thought, I'm never going to get a jury full of Trump supporters to convict Trump. Do you honestly think they wouldn't bring charges?
Of course they would.
That is not the prosecutor's job. The only thing that matters, and he might have a fading memory today, but when he held those documents in 2017, his memory was much better. Okay. And as we just proved on his video, talking about the classified documents, even today, when he reacts to Trump holding the classified documents, he's outraged. So he obviously knows it's illegal. He admits that they're classified. He said, I have all of the classified stuff downstairs. Trump, when he was looking at the plan with Milley, he was saying, I could have classified this as president. They're both admitting that what they're holding is classified information. Only Trump is prosecuted. You got people, his ghostwriter deleted evidence after he was told to hold on to it. Zwanitzer, I think his name is. Joe Biden's ghostwriter deleted evidence, not prosecuted. You have a Trump aide who deleted footage from the camera. He is prosecuted. You have Trump moving boxes down the hall. His personal assistant moved boxes down the hall. He's prosecuted. Biden had people move them from his Virginia home to Delaware. Biden moved the boxes out of state. No big deal. The discrepancies and the hypocrisy is overwhelming. Nobody seems to care.
And he threw everybody under the bus. He threw everybody under the bus, his staff. And
he said that not only did he lie, but he's lying about what the report says. Now, he could lie and say, I never said that to my ghostwriter. He could lie. That's his option. He's been lying his whole life. But when he says, not only did I not say that, but the report doesn't say that. As you just pointed out, on page 1, it says it all. What he's doing is pointing you and directing you to page 12, because under page 12 is a caption that says other classified documents, not the Afghanistan plan, not the Obama memo, not the classified information in his notebooks. That has already been determined earlier in the report that Joe intentionally withheld that classified information and knowingly disclosed those classified documents. What Joe wants you to do is go to page 12 where it says under the caption, other classified documents, and say, evidence does not support that I broke the law. And take that one line and apply it to the whole 300-page document and say, you see, even the report says I'm not guilty. That's not what the report says. What he's quoting is just from one particular page. But he's so dishonest and such a liar that he's saying he's not guilty of everything in that report. Nobody's going to check it. Nobody questions him.
Well, he's getting a pass on being prosecuted because of his age and his inability to remember. Now he stands up a day after this report was released and he says, I remember everything. I do this job and I'm good at it. Well, then prosecute him. If Joe Biden doesn't want the cover that the report is offering, if Joe Biden wants to fight against what's been written in the report, that cognitively he's declined to a point that a jury would be sympathetic to an old man, prosecute him.
Yeah.
He's he's absolutely standing up there on national TV, daring the prosecutors to change the report to, I'm not in cognitive decline. I remember everything and I'm able to do this job. Fine. I'm down with that. I'm 100% down with that. Do it. Change the report and prosecute him. Why aren't we doing that? You have this man standing up saying, believe the first part of the report where it says I did nothing wrong. It's not in there. He's a liar, but he wants everyone to believe that. Believe the first part of the report. Don't believe the part where it says I can't remember. Don't believe the part where it says I'm a sympathetic. I'm an old man who would create sympathy on a jury. Oh, okay, then fine. Put it in the report that he's not an old man. Put it in the report that his memory is pinpoint accurate, and prosecute him. It's nuts. It's nuts to believe that this guy, because he understands one thing: power. The Democratic Party, they want to continue power. And Joe Biden understands that if he goes out there and accepts the part of the report that lists him as cognitive decline, he can't run again. He cannot run again. If Joe Biden stands on that microphone and says, I agree with the entire report, he's done.
So let me ask
Joe Biden doesn't want to be done, but Joe Biden will be done.
So do you think he's going to run?
He's going to run. But
you think he's going to be the nominee? You don't think he's stepping aside from Michelle?
No, I think Gavin Newsom's in play. I think Whitmer from Michigan play. Gretchen Whitmer.
She won't win.
Well, it's not a question of winning.
Dude, if it's not Michelle, then they have to give it to Kamala Harris, even though they know that she's not going to win either. They're not going to sidestep a black female vice president with a white female who's a governor. No, I don't think they would ever do that.
Kamala Harris has zero equity.
We know that, right? Like they're afraid that she's not going to be she won't win either. But I think they would make an exception to say, "Come on, Kamala, it's Michelle Obama."
Their best play right now, the Democratic Party's best play, is Nikki Haley. Don't let anybody believe that. Don't let anybody make you believe that she is not a plant of the Democratic Party. Her job is to stay in this race. Well, she's staying for one reason in particular, because she's hoping that one of these crazy indictments stick and he's charged with a felony and he's actually arrested and placed in jail. Because then by default, a felon can't run for president by default.
No, a felon can run for president.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's in the Constitution because Eugene Debs, they put him in jail, and that was put in there on purpose because they were worried. The founding fathers were worried that some person who's drunk with power and abuses their power would put their political opponents in jail. So they put that in there that you can run. The fear that they have is that almost all of the polling says if Trump is in an actual jail cell, if he's been convicted at that point, his support drops considerably. So sure. And he's at a point now where he has to win just to stay out of jail. And I think that's the biggest fear that I have about what's going on with our country, that you hear a prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich, but you know what? 4 prosecutors are doing it in different states, in different cases. And you're supposed to be judged by a jury of your peers. Trump didn't get a jury with Letitia James. They're seizing his property. They're telling him you can't do business in New York for the next 3 years. They're fining his sons $4 million each. This overreach should scare everyone because that's how communism starts. Communism comes in and says, what's his name in Cuba? Appropriate, and they took all the property. That's what they want to do. If that doesn't scare people, I'm looking at okay. I gave you the German Shepherd head tilt. That has me scared more than anything. I think, every time I ask someone if Trump's going to win, they usually preface it with, yeah, if the election is fair. I would say that you have to win. You have to win by such a large margin to compensate for the cheating that's going to take place. And I do think that he will. I think he's going to get a lot of the black vote. I think the African-American community is waking up and realizing, hey, you're kicking us to the curb too. We might be different races in this country, but one thing that bonds us all together, we're all Americans. And when you tell my kids that they have to go back to remote learning so you could house illegals in our school, I think they're angry enough to say, you know what? All races go for groceries, bro. All races shop. It doesn't matter your religion. You got to put gas in your car. You got to put food on the table. And I think Biden has screwed up enough that people across the board are going to vote for Trump. If it's free and fair, and if they stop playing these games, I think they know that. And that's why they're doing this other stuff, which let's just remove him from the ballot. Let's not even give the American people the opportunity to vote for them. And that scares me more than anything that we discussed, because then you're living in the Soviet Union, then you're living in North Korea, where they're telling you you cannot vote for the person you want to vote for. That scares the shit out of me.
If Trump wasn't going to win, Trump wouldn't be prosecuted. If they didn't fear Trump, they would have left him alone.
You saw that. I proved that on the video. On November 18th, 3 days after Trump announced, Merrick Garland appointed Jack Smith as special prosecutor. And that is not a coincidence. We all know the only reason Trump is being prosecuted is because he's running for president. That is a fact. And if you don't believe me, listen to Merrick Garland.
The Department of Justice has long recognized that in certain extraordinary cases, it is in the public interest to appoint a special prosecutor to independently manage an investigation and prosecution. Based on recent developments, including the former president's announcement that he is a candidate for president in the next election, and the sitting president's stated intention to be a candidate as well, I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint a special counsel.
I think if it's free and fair, I think he wins. I think enough people are going to vote for him anyway to compensate for the fact that they are going to cheat. So I do think he is our next president. He has to win to stay out of jail. That's the bottom line. I know I want him to win because he's the best choice for our country. As an American, I want him to win. It's nice to see someone get up there and salute the flag and not tell everyone at every second how bad we are and how much America sucks. He loves our military. He supports our police. And if he would run on the issues, like you just said, lower gas prices, low inflation, growing the economy, he would bring more people over onto his side. But he gets in front of a microphone, especially at these rallies, and he says certain things that I wish that he wouldn't. People say you can't take that away from him because that's who Trump is. My prediction is he wins. He stays out of jail. I don't know if he's going to prosecute any of these people. They certainly should be looked at. I hope the Bar Association is looking at Fannie Willis and Letitia James and all these other corrupt people that ripped this country apart and abused their power. I won't hold my breath. I don't know. Anyway, we are, I don't even know how many hours. Did you have fun?
Yeah, we fixed the world, buddy.
Listen, It's been a pleasure, bro. I hope you come back on again. Maybe we could just, like, that was the intro, the 4-hour introduction. Maybe we could just going forward, just talk about like news of the week, what happened this week.
Sure.
We'll make it a lot shorter. I had a great time. Do you want to tell people how they could reach you? You have any social media or anything?
I have no social media at all.
Smart guy. Smart guy. Thank you, bro. I appreciate it. You're a great friend, a great partner. I love you to death, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights and your wisdom. I had a lot of fun, and I hope to see you again.
Yeah, buddy. I love you too. I appreciate your time, buddy.
Thank you.